All right, everybody. Hello, hello. Oh my god. I'm so late that people are shouting at other YouTube channels. What's going on? Why is everyone talking about Tekking and Brago and and Parvision and Evil and all this? What's happening? Oh my god. Is this what happens when I'm super late? It's good to know for the future. Alright, guys. Let's talk about, first we gotta get through some supers. But, Will of Davies saying, got a fresh cut straight out of the salon. No, that is incorrect. I had to skip the haircut today. I pushed it back one more week. So next week there'll be a haircut. Alright. Swifty Schwanson says, bro, I hardly even come here, and I know you late. If you come here more often, you know what? Just for you, if you come here more often, I'll be more on time. Alright, real quick, some important stuff to talk about. Most importantly, well, okay, let's slow down. Let me talk about the supers first real quick. But I need some education from you guys, specifically. Alright, I need some education. I know I'm late, I know I'm coming in asking for some favors, but that's just the way it is. I need some education regarding, specifically, some Japanese mythology. Because I didn't know what an Ushioni was prior to last chapter when people talked about it. At this point in time, I feel like whatever the last four Gorosei are going to be are like, you know, I feel like they're going to be along the lines of famous Japanese monsters and stuff like that. So I did a little bit of learning, like now I know what a Kotengu is and stuff like that, but for the most part I know nothing. So I want to hear from you guys. Would you? And this is not to use for some theories and stuff like that. I'm not making theories on what the Gorosei's abilities are. This is purely for my own education. I want to learn a little bit from the people before we get into the who's going to beat Saturn. And people are confused, by the way. Let me address this real quick. People are confused as to why Sanji's in the thumbnail. Why is Sanji in the thumbnail? Why isn't Zoro in the thumbnail? I simply think that it is more likely at this point in time that Sanji might be involved. I'm not saying like Sanji's going to get necessarily the finishing blow or something like that. Although, there is something I'd like to bring up that suggests it is even possible that he might actually, he might get that. I'm garbling a lot of my thoughts at the moment, alright? Let me just say it like this, which is basically Sanji is there at the moment, right? He is present. He is in front of Saturn. I think it is very likely that Sanji at least is involved, whereas I have no way of knowing whether or not Zoro would be involved in the defeat of Saturn. I think it's entirely, that's not to say like Zoro's not going to get anything for the arc. I think it's entirely possible that once round 2 starts up, like Luffy's back to go help fight Saturn and everything like that, maybe Zoro switches and he's fighting Kizaru. Right? Maybe we're seeing Luffy, Sanji, something like that, taking care of Saturn while Zoro gets to fight Kizaru. I think most Zoro fans would be happy with that. I'm just saying at this moment in time, I see no sort of setup as to Zoro fighting Saturn, which is why I'm like, Sanji's right there. I think there's a solid chance that he's going to be involved. Let's throw him in the thumbnail. The other point as to Sanji being involved, let me establish this real quick. Who do the Gorosei parallel, right? And this is a video that's coming out tomorrow far more in depth, so I'm just going to share one little tidbit, one little nugget of it, something to think about. The Gorosei parallel Enel's priests, right? They pretty sharply parallel Enel's priests as well as Doflamingo's seats. In that regard, it's not crazy to think that, you know, the first time that Luffy fought one of Enel's subordinates, one of God's subordinates, it was a Luffy and Sanji tag team, right? That's not the craziest thing in the world. You know, I'm not saying that that's going to mirror things perfectly or whatever, but Sanji's literally right there. I think that it would be nice for him to get something this arc, and being involved in the helping with the defeat of Saturn would be pretty cool. So let me call out some supers real quick. Let me get Justin Holland first because he donated before the stream started. Justin Holland, thanks for the 5. I hope it's a Straw Hat crew attack like against Oars 2. I hope it's a Straw Hat crew attack like against Oars. Yeah, I don't know if everyone's going to be involved, but I would love to see like Frankie get something, Sanji get something. Who do I think Imu's dub voice will be? Because I'm hoping for John Noble. I'm not going to lie, I know almost nothing about the English dub voice actors. I barely know the names of some of the Japanese voice actors for One Piece. I know some of the, like, I know, what's his name? Christopher Is it Christopher Sabat? Am I crazy? Is he the voice actor for Zoro? Yeah, he's the voice actor. I know some. If you gave me multiple choice, I could get a lot of the English dub actors, but I'm not invested enough in the voice acting scene to know who the voice actors are going to be for some of these things. Justin Holland also asks, Strahds take the strengths of other Yonko crews and add it to their own, including their growth, charisma, and unpredictability. You know, it's kind of like, like Nami's literally walking around with Zeus right now. I wouldn't be surprised if Frankie picked up some upgrades after Sanji talked to him about the rapidly firing beams that he saw Queen do. I think that there is definitely merit to that. I mean, a lot of Luffy's growth came from just fighting Kaido and learning from Kaido. So there is definitely merit to that. And a lot of people also push this idea that I think is mostly correct, that by the end of the story, Luffy will have achieved all of the dreams of everybody that he has defeated, all of the pirates that he's defeated. So, like, you know, Big Mom wanted to create a perfect world, but Luffy's probably going to create, like, a world where everyone can actually live in harmony, you know? Things like that, I think, are going to come into play. Pedro Peralta, thanks a lot. Hey, Morj, nothing to do with the recent chapter, but do you think Weevil is a clone of Whitebeard gone wrong? Maybe he was Vegapunk's first try. I definitely believe that. I think at this moment in time, that's the easiest assumption to make about Weevil, that he is a Whitebeard clone gone wrong. Because, I mean, Bakin was involved in, you know, in Mads and everything like that. She has good reason like, she seems fairly convinced of Weevil's connection to Whitebeard. So it seems like a clone gone wrong seems pretty accurate. Keenan, thanks a lot. Hate that it's harder for me to catch streams live now with my new job. Hey, you got a new job, so, you know, that's that outweighs being able to catch streams, in my opinion. But you are, of course, missed. Always keep up the good content, Morj. In my opinion, you're the best One Piece tuber out there. Thank you, Keenan. I really appreciate you. Always appreciate you when you can come through on streams and everything like that. But, you know, you got life and all that stuff. It's good to hear that things are going well for you. Kino the Far. Fuck. Hate seeing this dude. Good morning. Update and OP question. My alternator broke, but my mechanic gave me a loyalty discount. Yeah, I mean, he'd better. Your car's in the fucking shop every other week. My computer caught fire last night. W student. Man, take your computer to the car shop too. See what he can do about it. Kino the Far also said, loan payments and medical debt replacing will be hard. If the world government run by demons and Luffy is a god, could Will of D actually be Will of the Divine? I don't like that. I prefer the idea that Will of D has something to do with Dawn or Devils or something like that. Simply because I like the idea that, you know, Luffy's a alternate type of god or whatever, but, like, at the same time, the D are the natural enemies of gods. I like the idea that we're fighting against the gods of the world, and, you know, it's rebellion against heaven and everything like that. I feel like it loses something a little bit if the heroes that are, you know, the underdogs that are fighting against, you know, the evil gods that control the world, if the underdogs actually represent the divine more than anything else. To me personally. Okay. Sorry, I lost track of things here. Just realized a bunch of memberships just got dropped by 02657. What a surprise. Not at all. Thank you, man. You are certainly one of the most appreciated members by far to come through on this stream, and I hope everybody else can give a big shout out, especially if we got a membership from 02657. Sway Shocks, Phoenix Allen, Yokai, Wade Turner, everyone say thank you to 02657, Monax, Gilfy Lindahl, Not a Pro 64, Great Peace, Axe D Charlotte, all of you lucky fuckers who just got gifted a membership, Jordan Vance, I swear you've been gifted before, this is not your first rodeo. Other thing I wanted to mention real quick, put your emotes in the chat right now, and we're way overdue on new emotes. We got a bunch of new emotes that we can add. I'm going to talk about that next stream for the chapter stream, actually. I'm not going to derail, well, maybe at some point, maybe I'll derail this stream to talk about it, but let's see. We'll see how we're looking on time. But yeah, all new members, spam your emotes. Be happy you got the emotes. The emotes are pretty nice. Grizzly Adams, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 2 months, man. Do you think Oda is saving Zoro's Shimotsuki/Ryuma plotline for after he beats Mihawk during the World Government War? It's the only plot thread to provide Zoro's character development after he achieves his dream. You know what? That's actually okay, so I was smirking at that towards the beginning of your statement because I'm just like, Man, that's just some shit that Oda forgot about in Wano. But okay, so what Grizzly Adams just said is actually very, very interesting if you think about it. Because if you are like me, right? Let's pretend you're like me, and you believe that Zoro defeats Mihawk before the fight with the world government. I understand some people believe that Zoro fights Mihawk after the fight with the world government. To me, that just doesn't make too much sense, simply because that would make Zoro versus Mihawk the final battle of One Piece, and we all expect it to be an epic duel. I don't think One Piece ends with some epic duel between Zoro versus Mihawk. I don't think that's what. I just don't feel like that's the most, like, it just changes kind of the whole climax of the story if it's like Luffy wraps up the story, finds the One Piece, everyone's saved, etc. Dawn is brought to the world, we're checking off all these things, Will of D, etc. And then it's like, and now what you've all been waiting for, 10 chapters of Zoro versus Mihawk. I just don't think that's happening, all right? So, no worries if you guys think that that's the way it happens, right? But let me just humor me for a second. So, I've always believed Zoro fights Mihawk, or at least in recent times I've come to believe Zoro fights Mihawk before the fight with the world government. What Grizzly Adams just pointed out is a great point, which is, let's say Zoro beats Mihawk, right? Now he's the world's strongest swordsman. He would be heading into that final battle against the world government, against presumably a Gorosei member, Venus Juro, or something like that. He would be heading into that final battle without really any sort of, it would be a fight, obviously, like, that's something for him to do, but there's not really any sort of, it's sort of like he's fulfilled whatever he wants to do, and now he's basically, there's not as much character stuff you can work with there, right? I really, really like the idea that his Shimotsuki past, like his historic past, who he represents, the lineage that he represents from, being passed down through history, the Ryuma lineage, I really like the idea that could come into play against the Gorosei, because they would likely have, if they're ancient, then they would likely have memories of Ryuma and Ryuma's significance in the One Piece world, and the effect that Ryuma had on scaring the world government off, from the One Piece world for a long period of time. So I really, really like that idea, actually. That's a very interesting idea, because that gives something very, that gives something much more, kind of like Luffy and like the Joy Boy Ryuma, those two, that sort of similar framing in terms of historic significance. Obviously, Joy Boy is more important, but the similar framing of them being mentioned in the same breath that happened at the end of Wano, where they're talking about, like, Joy Boy, he's like a hero as great as Ryuma and stuff like that. I think it would be really cool if, on the one hand, Imu's dealing with the return of Joy Boy and everything in the final battle, but at the same time, there's this descendant, this successor to Ryuma that they also have to deal with at the same time. I think that actually would be really interesting, and it would make me look at the Shimotsuki Ryuma plotline from Wano in a more positive light if that were to happen. So, great point. It's a great point when you get me saying that, you know what, I would change my opinion on something in Wano if X or Y were to be true. All right. Okay, the final storm. Thanks for the 5. Have you ever thought that devil fruits aren't really devil fruits, but only called so as one of the many evil things claimed by the world government? I really like that point too. Just because it fits with the idea that the world government, devil fruits are born out of people's imaginations and desires and things like that, and the world government would hate for people to, be able to get access to abilities that could allow them to rebel. At the same time, it's very, very possible that that's more of the name devil fruits is more of a cultural thing, because for the vast, vast majority of the populace of the One Piece world, like if you go to the corners of East Blue and everything like that, most of this crazy supernatural stuff that we deal with in the main storyline of One Piece, that's practically a myth to the average person, out in East Blue, right? For like probably 90% of the One Piece world, they barely even know what a devil fruit is. You know what I mean? Or if they do, it's like a mythical sort of object. So my guess would be that it's also very, like, maybe the world government spread that idea regarding devil fruits, but at the same time, maybe it's just, for the average person that's finding or eating devil fruits, you're just eating something and then suddenly gaining this strange, really weird ability, It seems demonic, supernatural, stuff like that. I wouldn't be surprised if it's just the colloquial way that people began to refer to these strange fruits that, 1 in a million people come across and eat and suddenly gain these, are possessed by these, these satanic powers, essentially, right? average villager from East Blue, they see Buggy the Clown terrorizing their village using these sort of satanic abilities. Where do you get this ability from? Oh, it seems like the devil's power. I wouldn't be surprised if there was no world government propaganda needed at all to convince people that, I wouldn't be surprised if people came up with it on their own, that these are the devil's abilities. Alito5, thanks for the 5. Mork, you gotta stop littering in my yard. I beg you. The city keeps giving me tickets for your littering. I can't pay them all, man. You gotta stop. Shit, man. But where else am I gonna put my stuff? I'm sorry, I can't. I just can't do that for you, man. 02657, thanks for the 5. I like thinking about this all as dreams versus nightmares with all of the recent Emu and Gorosei reveals. Yeah, I'm going back. So, like, if you go back... Okay, let me take a look. Because I've done several Emu videos, right? Several Emu videos. Because, we've been trying to figure out his abilities for the longest fucking time. So, let's see. Yeah, I did one that was about Emu and the Nightmare Fruit. One that's about Emu having the God Fruit. One that's... Okay, Emu and the Nightmare Fruit, that video also covered the possibility that Emu has the Sea Devil Fruit and the Moon God Fruit. Yeah, I've thrown out several possibilities because Emu's just so fun to speculate because there's so many things at this point that thematically would fit. The Nightmare Fruit really fits because if you think of Luffy's Devil Fruit as essentially being... All devil fruits are obviously dreams, but it's kind of like Luffy's devil fruit is the dream devil fruit, right? Like whatever you can think up, imagine, you can make that a reality, right? Emu being a nightmare fruit would be perfect in contrast. But at the same time, we're getting all this satanic imagery, verbiage, hell being on the top of the world and everything like that. We've had ideas like this before, like Doflamingo is actually the devil masquerading as God. That's a very common idea, so Emu just having the devil fruit would fit very well. Emu having the moon god fruit would fit very well. There's so many things that thematically would fit at this point. The nightmare fruit I really do like because, the things that were chasing Sabo and Cobra really did seem very nightmarish in that sense. Volume up. How's the volume for you guys? Let me see. It seems like, it's showing fine audio here. I can up it a little bit. Upped it a tiny bit. That was from Hurrying Lyrics 44. Oh, let's get the stream likes up to 200 real quick. Diaklia, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 10 months, man. If you were to rank the Strats based on their ambition/will to achieve their dreams, how would you do it? Obviously, Luffy and Zoro first, but after that. That's a great question. That is a great question. Their ambition/will to achieve their dreams, how would you do it? You know how I'm going to rank it? I'm going to rank it prior to them meeting Luffy. Because I think that once a lot of the Straw Hats got involved with, the Straw Hat crew, a lot of their... We started to get a bit less focus on a lot of them in general. And I don't think that, and their long-term desires, and I don't think that that's representative of internally how driven each of them are for their dreams. So let's say Luffy and Zoro first and foremost, because they're the ones that Oda focuses on the most, and they're the ones that, Oda has played up their dream and ambition the most as being the most important to them, and centers a lot of their writing around that, right? So we're going to say them first and foremost. Then I'm going to go ahead and say, I want to say... A lot of it is close, though, is the thing. I feel like Robin is up there. Because for Robin, for a long time, her dream was the only thing keeping her alive. She literally wanted to die. And the only thing that she had was her dream. Right? So I feel like that's important. But at the same time, it's hard to weigh that because it's kind of like she was so empty that she had only one thing. So in that context, the dream was very, very important to her. But now that she has what's more important, which she actually wanted, which was friends, comrades, etc., I wouldn't be surprised if her dream is, relatively speaking, no longer as important. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's hard to rate people before and after they join the Strahd crew for a variety of reasons. Brook, I think his dream is fairly important, but at the same time, like, I think it's, on the one hand, Brook's funny, because on the one hand, his dream is wildly important, because he... For decades and decades and decades by himself on the boat, he like so desperately fought to get back his shadow, and he was held together by his dream of being able to see Laboon again, right? But at the same time, the moment he's kind of offered, like, well, you could see Laboon again, which you could go do right now, or you could chill out with us for like a couple of years. He was like, fuck it. I'm going to take a couple more years off instead of going to see Laboon. And his mentality was literally like, Laboon, you could wait a little longer. Like, damn, that's cold. I was like, Laboon shouldn't have to wait a little longer, motherfucker. He's been banging his head against the red line for God knows how long. Go see Laboon right now, then go back and hang out with the Straw Hats. They would have waited. They took 2 years off anyway for the time skip. Go see Laboon. You would have been able to catch up with the Straw Hats again later. That's my only thought. But Chopper, I feel like, I don't know. It's hard to rank shit after a certain point. Like, we just don't focus on certain things enough. Frankie, I think a lot of the characters like Frankie, Sanji, who weren't actively pursuing their dreams before they met the Straw Hats, I would have to rank them a little bit lower in terms of their dedication to their dreams. Not because it's just, you know, they weren't as, they clearly had these dreams and they were very important to them, but it wasn't like this burning sort of ambition. Chopper, I feel like it should be really important to him, and he's technically always studying to fix all, like, cure all diseases, so it's hard to rate him, but he doesn't talk about it that much. So, anyway, I can't rank all of them. It's too hard. I think that would have to be its own, like, I'd actually have to sit down and figure it out, but it is a good question. Caleb Brown says, Morj, I want to apologize for the Ghetto Reverie questions. If you didn't catch it, go check out the Ghetto Reverie on Virgo's channel. I do come in at the end if you want to see that. But beyond that, it's 10 hours of them just talking about whatever, basically. The Ghetto Reverie questions, I don't mind them. But when I came in, there's like so many voices because there's like 20 people and everyone's yelling. And then every now and then I would realize that people are like yelling at me, asking me stuff. And then I'm like, what are you guys asking? And then they're like, okay, I didn't realize I was going to be asked this shit right off the bat. I just came in to chill and listen for the most part, but it's all good. I mean, if I'd come in earlier, I think I would have been maybe more on the same speed as everybody else, but I was catching the tail end of it when everyone was fucking wasted, and I just showed up, just started drinking. Dan Linone says, could awakening a devil fruit mean that specific devil literally awakening / void sentry counterparts? Could awakening a devil fruit mean that specific devil literally awakening void sentry counterparts? Oh, hence Joy Boy, a devil returned when Luffy awakened. Oh, shit. That's a really fucking interesting idea. Because, I mean, Saturn had that pentagram thing. I kept saying pentagon in the stream before. And I knew it was wrong, but for whatever reason, or I didn't know it was wrong. It was more just like subconsciously, I was like, that's not pentagon. But each time I would just say it would just come out, basically. But pentagram. I like the idea that something's being summoned, something very ancient and evil. That's a cool idea. Okay, I think we're pretty much, no, not caught up. Stormfox, thanks for the 2. Saturn is based off Baal from Lesser Key Solomon. I don't know what the fuck, that's so specific. That doesn't sound right. Baal from, is this a video game? Oh no, it's Hebrew. It's a winged creature. This seems too specific. I don't know if this is correct. I feel like Ushioni seems more likely, but at the same time, I do see the visual similarities. Hearing lyrics told me to raise the volume, which I did. Onsting says, based on portrayal, Saturn should low diff crew. I don't know if that's true. I think it's way too early to be able to tell that. Timothy McQueen, thanks for the 10. What do you think about Joy Boy and Ryuma having a relationship parallel to that of Luffy and Zoro in the Void Century flashback? I think if done well, that would entirely redeem Zoro's stuff in Wano. I prefer the idea that Ryuma has his own thing, honestly. Like, his own thing that came centuries after Joy Boy or something. I'd be totally cool with that. Because you gotta remember, Ryuma is he's already got a canonical story. Monsters, right? You can go read a one-shot right now about the story for Ryuma. Joy Boy is not a part of that. It's a really, Oda did a lot of one-shots that he compiled into one volume. I think it's called Wanted. Really, really fucking fun to read those one-shots, by the way. I really like all of them quite a bit. There's another one that was it was more comedic. It was called God's Diary or something like that. That was a really, really, really fucking funny one. Peak Oda comedy, easily. But the best story that Oda wrote in there was easily Ryuma's story, Monsters. If you go read that, it's a phenomenal one-shot that holds up even now, I think. Yeah, easily even now. You could read it just as a one-off short story, and it's a really entertaining short story. But that being said, I think that I prefer the idea of Ryuma just being his own thing. I do like the idea of Ryuma being invoked again in the final war to, to bring back, I guess, some of the seeds that were planted for Zoro back in Wano. And I would view a lot of that more fondly if that were incorporated in that manner. Let's get the stream likes up to 200 real quick. Crow Stray God, thanks for the 10. Hi, Morj. Which Yonko / former / current would be the best fleet admiral if they were Marines? Ooh, that's a cool question. Also, Sun Tattoo would go hard, especially given your similarities with Fishman. Sun Tattoo, that's a cool idea. I like that. If you guys don't know, in previous streams, I was like, I've wanted a tattoo for a while, and for the longest time, I considered getting a one-piece tattoo of the Straw Hats, Straw Hat flag, like just the Straw Hat skull and crossbones. That was what I wanted to get. And then the One Piece live action came out, and now it's basically just a generic, it's no longer a sort of niche personal tattoo. People look at it and they're just like, oh, this guy must really fucking like that Netflix series, So I'm not gonna get that. Sun Pirates tattoo is a cool idea. As for the Yonko question, I feel like Whitebeard would be a great fleet admiral. It's either Whitebeard or Shanks. Because Whitebeard, we kind of got to see Whitebeard playing general over the course of Marineford. We saw his interactions with Sengoku. They were both moving their pieces around, right? So Whitebeard has that. He also obviously has the strength to do it. And Whitebeard really cares about his men. So I think all those categories would make him a really good fleet admiral. I think Shanks would be a good possibility as well. We don't know. I think Shanks would be a very level-headed fleet admiral. I think Kaido and Big Mom are too emotionally volatile to be fleet admiral. Like, Kaido, you can't have a fleet admiral who drinks 24/7 and flies off the handle and stuff. And then Big Mom, she's just really not all there. So I'd say Whitebeard first and foremost, and then maybe Shanks. Party McFly, great name. Thanks for being a Yonko to remember for 6 months. Could the awakened characters with black smoke be some kind of forced or artificial awakening that the world government created? I'm not even, I don't even... We're still at a point where I'm trying to figure out if the smoke just having smoke in general consistently means something, right? Because, people have pointed out that Gear 4th Luffy had smoke, and Gear 4th Luffy wasn't even awakened. Yamato's smoke. Was Yamato confirmed awakened, right? So, before we even get into the colorings and stuff like that, this color means artificially awakened stuff, things like that, I just want a basic understanding of let's establish one thing first, that this stuff definitely means awakening. I like to believe that we can confirm that smoke means awakening, but again, we have contradictions like Gear 4th Luffy. So, it's weird. I mean, Gear 4th Luffy, does he always... Let me see. Let me see something. Is he always... Yeah, he is pretty much always... He's always got the smoke around him, right? I don't know, man. Might be wrong. Yeah, it's pretty much always got the smoke around him. So before we can get into shit like, the coloring and stuff like that, I'd rather just... Let's confirm the basic fact that, yeah, the smoke is always going to be used from here on now to signify awakening. Rodolfo, thanks for the 10. Hey, Morj, hope you're doing great. If we don't see Kizaru awaken, do you think it's because he was never truly pushed in combat that made awakening his fruit impossible? Same with Big Mom. I don't think those are the reasons that these characters were never awakened. Kaido was pushed in combat plenty of times from his past, as far as we understand, right? Big Mom, didn't she just fight for 3 days straight with Kaido? How far do you need to be pushed in combat to awaken? You know what I mean? I just don't believe that that's the reason that makes sense to me. Frederick Leah, thanks for the 10. Odds on the Gorosei fighting the Revolutionary Commanders, as they're 5 in each case and have no clear role in the end game. I know the power levels seem not to add up, but Oda could pull shenanigans. Watch out for tomorrow's video. I think there is a lot of I think there's a ton that you can draw on from previous arcs in the story that strongly suggest what happens with the Gorosei in the future. And I think you can look at what's already happening with Saturn and say that, yeah, this is pretty much mirroring what we've seen in past arcs, basically. I think that you can make some... I think you can make some really, really, really good guesses about the Gorosei's future. So I really suggest to watch out for tomorrow's video. Sith Lord, thanks for the 5. Seems cruel to abandon the Seraphim to the government. Oh, but I'll add to your question. I don't think Revolutionary Commanders is the answer. But I think Dragon... Well, just watch out for tomorrow's video. Sith Lord, thanks for the 5. Seems cruel to abandon the Seraphim to the government and not even try to get them off the island. Kind of out of character for Nami, especially to abandon children. Does she maybe not view them as children? They're creepy fucking children. They're not normal children, I'll tell you that. I don't know if they count. They're not normal children. If you really want to count them by age, they're like babies. And if you want to count them by, like, actions, they're like adults. So, it's just an appearance that they're children, really, right? Timothy McQueen, thanks for the 10. I love Monsters. It's my favorite and wanted. Yeah, if there's an anime of it coming out, too. I'm actually really excited for that. When does it come out? Monsters anime, Oda. Let's see. Yeah, it should be coming out sometime. I'm really excited for that one. It's a good one. If you want to, let me say this. If you want a preview of Zoro versus Mihawk, go read Monsters. Go read Monsters. It's great. I guess it's fanfic, but I like the idea of Joy Boy meeting Ryuma right after Monsters ended with the food sack over his shoulder. I think that'd be cool. I get it, but I like the idea that Ryuma is the protagonist in his own section of the story. You know, like the period that he existed. I like the idea that Ryuma is just the concept, essentially, of what if Zoro was the main character, right? Ryuma and Zoro, by the way, have their personality. Ryuma's an interesting character if you go back and read, because if you go back and read Monsters, you'll find that because it's Oda's, it's an early concept story from Oda, right? So One Piece itself wasn't written and everything like that yet. So Ryuma, his character, is actually a mix of personality traits between Luffy and Zoro. You can see it's like if Zoro was a bit more like Luffy and had some of Luffy's more, how do I say, some more of Luffy's tendencies and stuff like that, and a bit sillier, goofier. That's Ryuma, right? But you still see the Zoro in him, and it's still Zoro first and foremost. So I like the idea of Samurai Ryuma as just a what if, essentially, a canonical what if of, like, if you took Zoro and, like, he was just the main character or something, you know? I feel like it's cool if him and Joy Boy existed at the same time, but I also just like the idea that this guy wasn't really a sidekick to anybody else. Ryuma just was the hero of some story that we never really get to read. We do get to read one snippet of it, but we don't really get the full story of Samurai Ryuma, and I like the idea that he's the hero of that story. Boogie Butt, that's a weird name. I think York will kill Saint Saturn using Seastone Tech to take her place in the Gorosei. I think Saint Saturn is also based on the Bull Demon King from SWK. What is that? Is that Sun Wukong? Because I'm pretty sure I kind of remember that reference, unless I'm crazy. The Bull Demon King from Sun Wukong. Okay, Bull Demon King. Because if you're right on that, then that's actually a great call, because Journey to the West, there's already a lot of references throughout One Piece, and we might be able to figure out more about the Gorosei based off of that. Oh, let's get the stream likes up to 300 real quick. Gio says, don't make sense for Joy Boy as the only reincarnated. But I don't think Luffy's a literal reincarnation. I just think it's the Nika fruit, personally. You know. Okay. I think I'm caught up there. We can start doing the speculations. Hold on. But before we get into it, I am kind of curious. I mentioned towards the beginning, I was hoping for some education, if you guys can, regarding some of the, like, are there some, how do I say this? Are there some Japanese, like, okay, let me share some stuff. I'm going to pull up the panels of the Gorosei, all right? I'm going to pull up the panels of the Gorosei. I think it's chapter 1084. 1084. All right. I'm going to pull up the panels of the Gorosei in transformed mode. All right. One chapter off, I think. Yeah, one chapter off. All right. So, looking over here, right? We see them. We see all of them. We see Saturn right here, right? This seems to be based on the order that the Gorosei were standing in. Might be a little hard to tell, but we see 5 Gorosei, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can see Saturn right here. What are some of these other characters, right? Like, I've heard... Does anybody have some Japanese knowledge? Does anyone know some stuff? JK Kane, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 12 months, man. Silverbum says, Lork out here wearing my grandpa's sweater. Look at Umibozu wiki. But Umibozu, I thought... Isn't that what... I thought that's what the fucking... I thought that's what Wadatsumi was. I thought that's what isn't Wadatsumi Ubibozu? Why is Wadatsumi so big? Am I crazy? I thought Wadatsumi was that. Right? Am I crazy? Evil already outlined it on Twitter. I think I saw Evil post something good on Twitter. But I don't remember what it was. What about a Baku? A Baku? Let's see, Baku. This is just a city. What am I supposed to do with this? Oh, Baku Monster. Let's do that. Oh, cool. I like this. It's an elephant thing. This thing's hilarious. What is this? This is hilarious. Okay, so a Baku. What do we think is the Baku? We think this thing over here is the Baku with the horn. Okay, so that's a Baku. People were saying Kotengu, right? Kotengu. So people think that's the bird, right? Everyone following so far? I think these things make sense. He was a pufferfishman. He's not a demon. No, he's like a pufferfish. Okay. For some reason, I thought Wadatsumi was... I must have misread somewhere. Usopp calls him an Ubibozu. Okay. Phantom Greyfire, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 1 month. Ushi-Oni are mythical creatures known for starting streams on time. Guess I'm not an Ushi-Oni. P.S. Wano analysis video sleeping underground in the real Wano, set it free. It will be set free. Don't you worry. It's like Pluton. Once it's released, there's no putting it back. Let's get the stream likes up to 300. All right, I guess I appreciate some of the ideas there. Let me I'll take a look at evil stuff later, but I guess there's not really some consensuses on what we got so far. All right, let me pull up Microsoft Paint. It is Microsoft Paint time. It's time to get to the actual crux of what we're supposed to talk about today. JK Kane, thanks for the 5. Do you think the Blackbeard Pirates are going to take advantage of the Egghead event aftermath, or are they going to make a move before Saturn is dealt with? So, fun fact. One of the stream topics that I was considering before this stream topic, because I just think this is more interesting for this moment in time, was who is Katarina Devon? Right? We already did one stream kind of talking about that, but now it's way more interesting because now we can actually cross off a bunch of characters, and all of the obvious suspects that people had are off the board. Bonnie is off the board. That is clearly the real Bonnie, right? Sanji, off the board. There's other characters. I think people suspected some of the Vegapunks. Those are off the board. Yeah, I think just it's become a lot more clear who can or can't be Katarina Devon, and I think the remaining options are very interesting. So that is going to be a very interesting stream at some point, but not this chapter. Right now we got to talk about the Gorosei because it's too interesting not to talk about. I do think that the Blackbeard Pirates... I think that it could be a thing where they make a move towards the very end, right? Somebody even suggested, right? What did the Blackbeard Pirates do? They hunt powerful devil fruits. If Saturn is killed here, his devil fruit's going to pop up somewhere. Lafitte / Katarina Devon picking up Saturn's fruit, taking it over to Blackbeard. That would be really, really, really pretty insane, right? Being able to get a Gorosei's fruit. So there's a lot of options there, but I do think that the Blackbeard Pirates make some sort of a move fairly soon. All right. There's so much shit happening right now. Here's the thing with the Blackbeard Pirates. Here's what makes them so cool. There's so much shit happening right now. And the Blackbeard Pirates, if you think back to like Impel Down and Marineford, their specialty is like they'll make it clear that they're involved, and then a million other things happen. Readers and viewers' attention is absolutely wrapped and focused on all the major shit that's going on. And then right when we least expect it, the Blackbeard Pirates show up, right? They're basically the piece de resistance, right? On the cavalcade of craziness that Oda sets up in his biggest arcs, right? It's like, and here's the thing that you guys forgot about, right? Which was always set up to be the absolute kicker on top of everything else, right? Blackbeard Pirates showing up Marineford, killing Whitebeard, stealing his fruit, bunch of level 6 prisoners and all that, right? And if you go back, like many people, if you go back and watch anime reactions and stuff like that, it's always a pleasure to see when the Blackbeard Pirates show up, because people literally forget. So, like, it is signposted for the reader that Blackbeard is involved in the storyline. He's got something that he's really planning on doing. He tells us straight up in Impel Down, like, I'm going to turn the world upside down. I'm going to do some crazy shit. You just forget, because so much other stuff happens in Marineford. And by the climax of Marineford with Ace's death, you're so emotionally just like torn in pieces based off everything that's happening so far with Ace and everything like that, that the last thing that you really want to see that would really ruin the situation would be Blackbeard showing up. And because it's not on your mind, when he does show up, it has a really, really strong effect. So it's always fun to see people's reactions when Blackbeard shows up. So with all that in mind, would Blackbeard show up during the events of the arc? Or like the Blackbeard Pirates make their move, obviously not Blackbeard himself. Would they show up during the events of the arc to fuck shit up? Or right at the end to basically screw things over in a way that we're not expecting? I feel like, I mean, it's not like Oda's going to do it the same way every time, obviously, but I would love to be pleasantly surprised by however Oda includes the Blackbeard Pirates. So with that in mind, I would like to think that it'll be somewhere deep into a fight with Saturn or something like that. Or maybe right at the tail end of it or something, or maybe it seems like things are resolved, and then Blackbeard Pirates make their move in a way that really fucks things up and causes problems. So interpret that as you will. And Crust, thanks for being a Pirate King member for 2 months, man. I hope you enjoyed the last podcast. For those of you who don't know, the Pirate King tier podcast, hour-long podcast talking about a bunch of shit, and a lot of it, this last one, talking about addressing questions people had about what they think about what might be coming in the final saga, but also a lot of real life stuff and even some like video game stuff. If you're interested, you can become a Pirate King tier member. You can check it out. You get access to that podcast as well as like all the other Pirate King hour-long podcasts and the Yonko weekly podcast. Anyway, hi Morj, thoughts on current Chainsaw Man chapters? I haven't read in a few, I want to say 3-4 chapters, so I don't have a thought on it just yet. I'll let him build up. Do you plan on watching the Undead Unluck anime, and are you caught up on the manga? I'm not caught up on Undead Unluck in the manga. I am definitely going to watch the Undead Unluck anime as soon as it gets to a certain point. Always love the content you put out. P.S. Read Fire Punch. I had somebody recommend Fire Punch to me literally like a couple days ago. I'm definitely going to get back on Fire Punch. Like, make myself read that. I'm sure it'll be a fast read just because it's, Fujimoto, and he keeps things tight. Let's get the stream likes up to 300. L, thanks for being a member for 7 months, a Yonko tier member. It's time for Dragon to do something big. Very well could be. Very, very well could be. All right, let's get into it. One more member, JWP, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 10 months. Anytime Blackbeard or Shanks shows up in a chapter, it's peak. It's kind of mind-blowing that we're getting to a point in the story where it's focused on the characters that whenever they even have a panel, it's a 10 out of 10 chapter. It is just so insane that we're there now, man. It is so insane. Like, I think it's interesting that Oda made such a point that Wano is an isolated country. It's an isolated country. I think, like, he really hammered that in because I think it's the last arc that we really, really had to be very focused and present in a singular, isolated storyline, right? Because once you enter the final saga, the doors are open, right? The floodgates are open. Now it's everything. It's the whole world. Everyone's involved, right? Things that are happening in Egghead have ripple effects that affect things that are happening 2 islands down on Hachinosu, which have ripple effects that affect things on Elbaf, right? Everything is connected. You can't just separate. So I think it's interesting that Oda did that, where he made, like, Wano, 150 chapter long arc. I think it was the last arc that he wanted to end it with a bang, right? This is the last arc that's going to be, the traditional thing of Straws get to a single island and everything's just focused on the characters of that island, and we're not going to deviate attention anywhere else, and everything's just going to be focusing on the citizens of the island and stuff like that, right? I think Oda wanted to do one last big grand storyline with that, which was Wano, 150 chapters long, and then from there on, it's open season. The world of One Piece is basically his oyster. So I think that's really cool that he set things up like that. But yeah, it does make the week-to-week reading experience just insane. Like, every chapter it's something. Every chapter it's something, and even characters that, like... I thought that once we get to the end of One Piece, we would be getting to see all of the characters that... I thought that once we're starting the final saga, we would know pretty much everybody that we're excited to see. You know what I mean? Like, Shanks, Mihawk, Dragon, Aokiji, the Admirals, remaining Yonko, etc. But that's not even the case, because even now, we have groups of characters that we're, still trying to figure out. You know what I mean? Like, Gorosei, God's Knights, Imu, these are all question marks at this point in time. So, even now that we're in the final saga, we still get lots of really surprising reveals regarding characters and things to really, new characters being introduced that will really, really, keep giving that sense of hype around character reveals. You know what I mean? I thought we might be out of those by the time that, honestly, by the time Green Bull was introduced, I was like, okay, that was it. That was the last big hype reveal, because Yonko's, Admiral's, Chichibukai, those are the three big names, right, that we've been waiting on for so long. Now we've seen all of them. That's it. Those are all of the major characters, right? But that's not even close to true. The Gorosei are still out here. Imu's still got a lot of characters. There's still a lot of characters hiding up in Mauritius. Rachia says, have you read Soul Eater? If not, you should. You know what's funny? I started watching a bit of Fire Force just because I was like, I finished Baki. I need something dumb to watch. I hear Fire Force is just like a random ass shonen anime. Let me try that. Mildly entertaining, a couple episodes in. Then I switched over to 1,000 Year Blood War, and I really enjoyed that. Maybe I'll try Fire Force again. Okay, let's do it. Most likely to defeat Saturn or be involved in helping. Okay, Remix King, thanks for the 5. Morj, I'm in the sauna, surrounded by men that I convinced to watch your stream. Don't embarrass me. I think you might be embarrassing yourself. P.S. Did you read the latest chapter of Pokemon Adventures? Well, I don't want to embarrass you, so I'm going to say yes. I hope all of the men in your sauna are very impressed. All right. Most likely to defeat Saturn, or... You know what? This needs to be bigger font. Most likely to defeat Saturn or help a lot. Let's make this red. And let's make this yeah, there we go. There we go. All right. That looks like a discussion topic. All right. I'm going to put number 1. Who do you think is the number 1 most likely? Huh? Who do y'all think is number 1 most likely to be involved in defeating Saturn? I'll give the answer if we hit 300 likes. Who do you think is most likely to be involved in defeating Saturn? You need it bigger? Who do you think is number 1? I think there's a very obvious answer. People are saying Sanji, which is incorrect. Iron Giant? No, it's not the robot is not... The robot that we know nothing about is not the most likely person to defeat Saturn. The correct answer is the character that has defeated the main antagonist of literally every single arc in the history of One Piece except for the Marineford Saga. It's fucking Luffy. That is obviously the most likely answer, no matter how you want to spin it, right? Luffy is obviously the most likely. Is that a guarantee that he's going to do it? No. But why is Dragon and Robot the overwhelmingly popular answer? Luffy's obviously the most likely to do it. Rodolfo, thanks for being Yonko tier member for 7 months. I think Luffy will get the last hit, but since the world government, I want to see Dragon. Yeah, I'm not saying Luffy by himself. I'm really, really fucking hoping that other characters are involved. And you know what? If Luffy's not involved at all, that's great too. But I'm just saying if we want to call it, call a spade. Luffy is the most likely character to ultimately take out Saturn, right? Luffy's the most likely, all right? You guys want to do odds? You want to do odds on this? No, it's too complicated to do odds. Too complicated to do odds. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of Blackbeard. I'm seeing a lot of Usopp. Why Blackbeard? Can I hear some arguments for Blackbeard? Because Blackbeard, as I understand, isn't he doing other shit now? Am I crazy? He was just fighting Law, right? I don't think Blackbeard would be involved here. One of the things that I think is very interesting is okay. Let's put a little description here. Obviously, objectively, the most likely to defeat Saturn, simply because that's just what Luffy does all the fucking time, right? Wait, maybe I shouldn't have a curse word here. All the time. Alright. But 2, I want to put Kizaru. Alright? Simple reason being, my simple argument for Kizaru, right? Then we'll get into other discussions. I want to take a look at the arguments for Blackbeard. The simple argument for Kizaru that I see is that Kizaru is potentially set up for character arc / growth. Potentially themes like being cog in the wheel, all obedient creatures ultimately rebel, stuff like that. I mean, you've got this consistent theme throughout the arc of like no one wanting to be a mindless puppet, right? Like Kuma rebelling upstairs at Marijua, the Sea Beast rebelling at the start of the arc, the Seraphim rebelling, even York rebelling against Vegapunk. It's just such a consistent theme. I wouldn't be surprised if Kizaru ultimately rebels in some way, right? It would be amazing if what if Saturn's about to kill Sentomaru? Could we see Kizaru maybe backstab Saturn in some way? I think that'd be really cool to see. I think that there's solid potential. And the reason I think that Kizaru is a good shot is simply because if we believe that anything goes anywhere with the stuff that's set up character-wise for Kizaru, the most meaningful way that you could write a moment of rebellion for Kizaru would be a moment where he disobeys what the world government wants him to do, and the only person that has greater authority than him right now on that island would be the Gorosei Saturn, right? So a moment where Kizaru chooses not to do what Saturn wants him to do, but instead rebels in some way, that would be the most meaningful by far, and also because it's the least forgivable, right? If you do anything against Saturn, Kizaru's basically throwing away his entire career, likely his life. So I think that would be quite meaningful. So, any other manner in which Kizaru would rebel would basically be a much more minor thing. This is the most powerful manner in which we could see some sort of character moment for Kizaru. So that's there. All right, I have not forgotten the robot. I'm putting Iron Giant. Why? Because people want this robot to do shit. Let me not curse. To do stuff. That's the main reason, right? People want the robot to do things. Kizaru 10th Nakama? That'd be funny. You're right, the commas do go inside quotation marks. That is poor grammar. My mistake. McDonald's, funny name. Thanks for the 7. I've seen your name before. Do you think Saturn is fully intent on killing everyone that saw him? Kinder how strict they are. I don't think everyone that saw him. That'd be kind of... Because, he didn't make any effort to hide it. But at the same time, it's interesting because for him, they're all insects, as he says, right? You all are nothing more than... human lives are nothing more than insects. So for him, it's like, I don't care if I have to wipe out, a few Marine battalions just to get my business done. Julian Garcia says Chopper takes 4 rumble balls. I'll say Chopper with 4 rumble balls. Reason being, who could even stop him? Don Krieg, it's Brother Gastinos. I want to hear some arguments for Blackbeard. Why Blackbeard? Rodolfo, thanks for the 10, but you're saying won't be Blackbeard, but I can see Lafitte or Katarina coming in right before the final heat and being captured, and thus Blackbeard has leverage over world government to get his demands. That's a really good argument, but at the same time, Blackbeard technically also has Garp, so he doesn't need that. But a Gorosei member, that's a very interesting idea. Okay. Imagine if you work for Blackbeard, right? And you head on back home to the island of Hachinosu at the end of your mission, and you're like, here's what I brought you. I brought you a fucking Gorosei member. Like, you just, what happens? Do you just get promoted to, like, super vice captain or something like that? Like, you must feel pretty damn good about yourself, right? You've got to be asking for a raise or something, right? Like, if you're Lafitte or Katarina Devon, you just capture a Gorosei. How crazy would it must feel pretty good, you know? Plot twist at the end, plus can take him back to Blackbeard for hostage negotiation, or kill him for fruit. So, fuck. Okay. So Blackbeard can eat fruit. I think those are the two options that make sense. We're going to vote on what makes the most sense as we get closer to filling out the options. I really don't know. Okay. I don't know if Blackbeard himself would show up, is the thing. Kagurabachi. Is that his name? I read the first chapter. I didn't even think the first chapter is that bad. I understand why a lot of people felt like the first chapter is really cliche and cringe, etc., but I feel like most shonen manga's first chapters aren't really that strong. I don't know which one. Like, the only ones that are really strong are, I don't know, like Attack on Titan. I think Attack on Titan is the best first chapter, like the most riveting first chapter that will hook in pretty much anyone, right? I think it's got the strongest first chapter because the premise is just too strong. Right, you could have that first chapter alone, and it works as like a really, really powerful like short story hook. But other ones, it's like I'm not reading like, I don't know, the first chapter of Hunter x Hunter and being like, oh, this is fucking amazing. Not reading the first chapter of, I think Hunter x Hunter is kind of weak first couple chapters, you know. Granted, it came out like a while back. Don't get on me about Hunter x Hunter. I love Hunter x Hunter, and I think the boat arc going on right now is fucking phenomenal. Blah blah blah. I'm just talking about the beginning, right? I don't know. Like, what's a series that's really good first chapter? I would think that Chainsaw Man's not that good from the first chapter, but it doesn't give you an idea of how fucking insane and well thought out Chainsaw Man turns out to be. Minfets is My Hero a good chapter? I get, like, I guess I don't know what you mean by good chapter or not good chapter. It's like, I don't know if they feel very strong. I don't know. Promise Neverland, says Oreo. My mistake. Promise Neverland similarly has a very strong first chapter similar to Attack on Titan. I think series that play with sort of horror elements or sort of like plant a deep sort of horrific mystery that incites a sense of sort of fear, apprehension in the reader right away. Like, I think that idea, because I think Promise Neverland kind of picks up on same ideas as Attack on Titan, which is basically, at least for its opening premise, which is a sense of helplessness and being trapped and at the mercy of giant, monstrous, terrifying creatures that can kill you, and you have no idea why you're in that situation or the truth of what that situation is. So it taps into that same sort of idea. Rachia, thanks for the 5. Yuruj is going to drop from Sky Island. He's going to be the size of San Juan Wolf, and he's going to one-shot Saturn. Does anyone have any good ideas on... Does anyone have any good ideas on what the hell happened with Yuruj? Does anybody have anything? Did Oda just forget? Is he coming back into play at some point? Dom, thanks for the 5. No one beats Saturn. He'll be about to lose and will call Imu to nuke the island. That's an interesting idea. But then my question is, okay, if you want to say no one beats him, how does he end up being about to lose? How do we get to that point? Virgil Hawkins says, I don't think Kagurabachi's first chapter did much to establish any sense of identity. It just felt like generic edginess, in my opinion. You know what? That's a good point. I think establishing I don't think that One Piece's first chapter is that strong. I like it a lot in hindsight, but I think initially reading it, I wouldn't find it that interesting. But I would agree that establishing a sense of identity, or essentially carving out what your niche is going to be in the first chapter is important. Oh shit, what did I do? I think that at the same time, again, like a series like Chainsaw Man, I wouldn't really know what's so good about it early on. I don't think Jujutsu Kaisen had a good first chapter either. And I think part of that is because I think Itadori is not a good protagonist, but we won't need to get into that. Where are we at? Dom, thanks for the 5. No one beats Saturn. No, we covered this. Kino the Far, thanks for the 5. What if the Mother Flame destroys Egghead and Saturn dies as collateral damage? Okay, so that's kind of similar to what Dom was saying. Except in this case it would kind of be like a nuke going, like an accidental explosion. The Straw Hats could escape, but Saturn and the Marines would be vaporized. Dude, all those Marines dying? I don't know how I feel about that. It is interesting that all the Marines on the island right now are Marines that we don't really have any sort of personal connection to. Right? We're not seeing a lot of the familiar faces, you know? Like, I'd feel, we've seen him so much. He's never been nice to us, right? Nice to us, like the characters we like when he shows up. But I'd be so sad if Manga died, you know? I feel like some of us would be sad if Manga died, just because he's like, you know, old familiar face. All the Vice Admirals here are just random people. Interesting. That is a really interesting idea. I like these ideas, Kino the Far and Dom, of the island just basically going up in flames at the end of the day. Okay. Back to this. Kino the Far says you're not connected to Doll? Fuck, maybe Doll will survive somehow. Okay. I'm not going to put down... Unless someone can give me a good argument for Blackbeard, I'm not going to put down Blackbeard. Otherwise, I'm going to put down Dragon, because it's about damn time, and he hasn't done anything, and his enemy is the world government, and Vegapunk was talking to him at the start of the arc. And he's friends with... yeah, I can keep writing. Friends with Vegapunk, and maybe Kuma is heading to the island. I don't know. I don't know if Kuma's heading to the island, but Kuma's heading somewhere. Somewhere relevant, right? Sway Shocks, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 3 months. Thoughts on Saturn being a demon like in Film Red? I didn't watch Film Red, but I know that there was a thing in their big villain called Tot Musica, right? And Tot Musica is supposed to be a demon, right? A demon king or something like that, right? Kind of want to pull up the clip of Shanks fighting Tot Musica, but I don't want to get copyright struck, so I'm just going to pull it up for myself. Shanks versus Tot Musica. The flashback thing. Rachia says, what about the real Kuma? I don't think... You guys think Kuma could take out Saturn? Let's get the stream likes up to 400 real quick. I mean, Kuma's showing up, but I just can't imagine Kuma in this state doing anything. I could see Kuma being involved. I could say Kuma shows up and is involved in some way and helps a bit. Revenge. Help Bonnie. I don't know. I'll just say Kuma is involved. Yeah, let's throw Sanji in. Been waiting too long. I don't see Blackbeard necessarily. It would be a really cool surprise if Blackbeard shows up. And we could get one more Luffy Blackbeard sort of confrontation before it's time for, you know, before their final match or whatever. They haven't talked in years. They need to reconnect. They need to get on, you know, get their dynamic going again. They did speak over Den Mushi, Dressrosa. Abraham Ogobaslace, thanks for the 10. Hey Morj, normally love your content, but the Jujutsu Kaisen spoilers that you dropped in your last stream really ruined my listening experience. Doesn't seem right to drop Jujutsu Kaisen spoilers in a One Piece stream. That is something I talked about last time, and I talked about it more towards the end of the stream, because I didn't realize, as I was saying it, how many people had not yet been made aware of what happened. That is something that is it's a mistake, and I've done it before in past streams. I've tried to stop doing that as much as possible, But the Jujutsu Kaisen one, that one, I basically, like, and again, this is not me trying to defend that as right or anything like that. This is just me explaining why in my mind I didn't really think that was something that people would not have been spoiled on at that point, is because that thing had just been so rampant everywhere for the past several weeks. Like, I couldn't go anywhere, like Reddit, Twitter, YouTube, wherever, without that being talked about or referenced. I just assumed that everybody was aware of it. In my mind, I suppose it was kind of like, after Avengers Infinity War, when Thanos snapped half the population away, pretty much everybody knew about that, right? Whether you'd seen Infinity War or not, you were aware about the snap, right? It was just referenced everywhere. It was just all over the internet that Thanos had gotten the Infinity Gauntlet and killed off half the characters. So, to me, I guess at that point, I just assumed that the Jujutsu Kaisen stuff, like, when something is so prevalent, I stop realizing that it's a spoiler, because some percentage of people still haven't seen it. Because in my mind, when something's so prevalent, I'm just like, yeah, this is just a known thing. That is obviously a mistake. That is not something that's not a reasonable excuse. I can only explain why in that moment that was, like, I wasn't even thinking that, like, oh, it's not something that I should be bringing up here. So I'm sorry. No more Jujutsu Kaisen spoilers as far as I can think of. Like, anything that's happened recently or anything like that. I don't think I've mentioned anything. And going forward, obviously, I'm just going to be trying to be tighter and tighter on that sort of thing. So, sorry. Again, sometimes I just forget that just because certain things are showing up everywhere on my feeds and everything like that, and everybody that I know and interact with is aware of certain things, because I knew many people who never even tried Jujutsu Kaisen, who, like, were mild anime fans who had heard about it. So, from my perspective, it's like, yeah, everyone knows. But, obviously, you never have a case where literally everybody knows. So, my mistake. I do spoil on things that have been out for a while, like Naruto and stuff, like series that ended a long ass time back, like Naruto, like old era anime, etc. I do spoil it for those because it's just like statute of limitations. But Jujutsu Kaisen, obviously that's different. It had just come out. It had been a few weeks since the chapter. I just thought that in those few weeks, the news had basically spread to everybody. So, sorry, man. Tyson NJ, thanks for the 5. I think Blackbeard is going to take whatever power Saturn has, and he'll be the first mortal with it. He will have a different kind of transformation. That's interesting. That's interesting. Is there any sort of symbolism we can think of Blackbeard having a Ushi Oni ability? I don't know about that. Blackbeard's... Yeah, I don't know about that. Let me see one thing, actually. His flag has... 8... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. His flag does have 8 bones. So, I mean, there is some 8 theming in there. That's a cool little idea that could take place. Dracus Luthas, thanks for 5. Maybe it's a Whole Cake Island situation. They lose but escape. Say only Dragon is strong enough to fight Saturn but cannot defeat him. He allows Luffy to escape. Man, if Dragon can't even defeat one Gorosei member, then I'm just like, how do they even win by the end of the story? Welleton Hudecker, thanks a lot. Dragon will appear and defeat him because it will be the first opportunity in a long time to directly harm the world government. A Gorosei outside of Marijoa is exposed. Yeah, I think there's a strong argument for Dragon. I think there's a very strong argument for Dragon. Ender Anami says, I had friends who don't even know what Jujutsu Kaisen is, and they knew the spoilers all. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That was kind of the... Like, it wasn't even a conscious thing of me thinking, like, okay, because this person knows, then I'm just going to assume everybody knows. It was just, over the last several weeks, I saw it everywhere. I had people I spoke to who were barely anime fans, or who even were anime. Like, I knew people who didn't follow that series specifically, but were fully aware of it. Or, like, even people tweeting, like, I don't even know who this character insert is, but they blah, 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 right? So, in my mind, just subconsciously, I was just like, yeah, this is open news now, right? Same way everybody knew that, like, Thanos killed all those people in the Avengers, right? At the end of Infinity War. I just assumed it was the same thing. Obviously, that is not the correct assumption to make, because there's always exceptions. Christopher Marin, thanks for the 10. I believe it will be resolved with Kuma, huge Ursus shock, sacrificing himself and sending everyone away. resolved with Kuma. Oh, I see. I don't know if sending everyone away again. Then they gotta fly for 3 days. But I also think Dragon needs to arrive. Maybe the explanation is his wind fruit, if confirmed. Dragon flying there real quick with a wind fruit would be awesome. That'd be a great way for him to show up. Let me put down Sanji while we're talking about this. Sanji, I think, will be involved because he's there. He's literally there and hasn't had a fight. And yeah, he's literally there. He hasn't had a fight. I also think it's relevant that he did get to fight against like NL's priests, like help Luffy against the first of NL's priests and stuff like that. Plus, he helped Luffy against the first of NL's priests. Caribou? Timeless says, Yo, Thanos did what? Spoilers. Sean Easton, thanks for the 5. The more wacky the power system, the funnier it is when someone shows up with a gun. In Jujutsu Kaisen, a good sniper would still take out a fuck ton of top tiers. Yeah, it's funny because, like, in more modern series, Jujutsu Kaisen is a modern series, therefore, you know, I don't know how many characters can deal with guns that well. But there are characters in Jujutsu Kaisen that use guns, funnily enough, if I remember, like during the first inter-school tournament. Oh, let's get the stream likes up to 400 real quick. Young Doka, thanks for the 5. My question is, if Dragon does something huge, does it take away from what the Straw Hats actually do in the incident? That's why, okay, if you're asking my opinions, right? If you're asking my opinions, I think that ultimately Luffy beats Saturn. And it's something of a team effort. I think it would be really cool if Dragon shows up, but I do feel like it should ultimately still feel like more of a... I don't feel like this is an arc where it should feel like the Straw Hats need to be saved, to me. Just because the framing of the arc is very much like the Straw Hats kind of have something to prove right here, basically. Like, they're showing up, they're like, yeah, we're fucking Yonko crew now. We can do whatever the fuck we want. We got your girl York, and we're gonna leave with her, and there's nothing you can do about it. And the world government's like, well, we'll send fucking everybody that we can. We'll fuck you guys up. And they're like, yeah, good luck with that, right? That's kind of the feeling that I've been getting so far with this arc. Therefore, I do think it's important that the Straw Hats actually do succeed, especially with a lot of the dialogue around, like, oh, I don't acknowledge Luffy as a Yonko. Like, multiple characters this arc. You know, Bonnie at the very start, Lucci. Like, there's a lot of doubt towards them as a Yonko. There's a lot of downplaying, I think. So I feel like it is important that the Straw Hats are able to succeed on their own terms in this arc. But I still think it would be cool if we're able to incorporate elements like Dragon showing up. Things like that. But I'm definitely not banking on Dragon showing up. I mean, how fast? The wind fruit would have to be really fucking fast. GDN, thanks for the 2. Sanji's going to be a hype tool, bruh. Don't sugarcoat. I can still say he's involved, right? I can still say he's involved. I'll say this. I think there is a solid possibility just because of phases of the story that we're kind of in, that Dragon really doesn't get his focus and shine till it really is the final war time, you know? Just because I feel like right now I feel like we're in a mode where I think that characters like Shanks, Mihawk, Blackbeard, the pirates are really going to be center stage more, and we're starting to see more of the world government side. But at the same time, I think that if there's one final big super strong, good guy, hype guy that Oda's saving in his back pocket, I think Dragon is the final one of those. And so in that regard, I wouldn't be surprised if Dragon is saved for even further down the line. You know, I think it could get... How do I say this? I feel like Dragon and Shanks serve very similar potential roles in the narrative of One Piece right now. They're both essentially that big good figure right now. They both occupy very similar space. And I think right now it's more so Shanks' time. I think Shanks' story comes to a close as Blackbeard's story comes to a close. And then I think Dragon's story comes into prominence and comes to a close as the Emu and world government stuff finishes out. Because I think ultimately Shanks and I just think that they represent something very, very similar in the One Piece world right now. In terms of, not in the One Piece world, but in the narrative of One Piece, you know? Zoro not involved. Zoro's involved with Lucci, to though Morj. Okay, the reason I'm not including Zoro is just because, yeah, Zoro could be involved at the end of the day. I kind of lean towards the possibility that, and I mentioned this at the start of the stream, I lean towards the possibility that Luffy and other crewmates, etc., are involved in defeating Saturn. And if Kizaru / when Kizaru gets back up, that's when Zoro could take Kizaru for a little bit, like people have been hoping to see. I don't know if Zoro's gonna fight Lucci the entire time. I just don't know if that's that important. The Water God says, you think that all the Seraphim rebelling against Saturn is a possibility? All of them rebelling against Saturn. Here's the thing. I prefer the idea that the Seraphim, one of them's already rebelled, right? Hancock. Doflamingo 1 should rebel in theory, right? Mihawk 1 should rebel in theory. But at the same time, I really like the idea of the world government side getting more and more strong characters. I like the idea of the world government side having the Seraphim to work with, you know? Because if we're staring down, just think about how fucking insane of a final war setup that is, you know? Just, you've got Imu, you've got the Gorosei, you've got the God's Knights, you've got the Seraphim, and you've got all the admirals and vice admirals. Like, for the longest time, just the admirals and vice admirals alone, we were like, yeah, that's a huge deal. The fact that the world government's got these guys, right? But not throwing the Seraphim, God's Knights, Gorosei, all of that stuff, that's just so much. Anuj Agrawal says, where the fuck is Devon? Devon is right here on this list. If you're asking where she is in the story, I don't know. And that's what's really exciting. We will do another stream trying to decipher who Katarina Devon is masquerading as after this. I think after this chapter we get a break week, so maybe that'll be one of the topics for a break week. JWP says Jinbei versus Saturn. Aw, man, I don't know if I'd better not see Jinbei like fucking up Saturn. All the Saturn hype goes down the drain if I see that happening. I do want Jinbei to contribute though, but if I see Jinbei suplexing Saturn like he did to Big Mom, I don't know. I just one, I'll be like, okay, who in the One Piece verse can Jinbei not successfully suplex? Who can he not do this to? Could he suplex Imu if he showed up in front of Imu? I don't know. And then 2, it's just like, all right, the Gorosei aren't all that. I mean, Bonnie's already stabbing Saturn, so we know that the Gorosei's thing is not super durability like Kaido. But you know, I just don't need to see. I would like to see Saturn do impressive things against characters first, rather than, you know, Jinbei show up and start just doing his like 4 mile per hour slow feet planted, stationary in the ground punches, you know, 40 brick tile fists, and that be super effective on Saturn. I don't need to see that right now. I would like to see Saturn, you know, really, really be a problem for characters first. MMM26 says Kuma sends crew off the island, Sabaody callback. That is a really, really cool idea. I just, again, I think I'm currently really liking the idea that the Straw Hats aren't like needing to be saved again at this point in the story, just because I feel like that's where really a lot of the growth comes from, right? If it ends with them again being just, it's like, okay, we're good enough to, like, first time around it's like, okay, we can't do anything against Kizaru, so Kuma has to save us. Now it's like, okay, we're good enough to deal with Kizaru, but can't do anything with the Gorosei, right? Even though it's been 2 years, all this training, all this growth, all this progress, whole storyline of Wano becoming Yonko, still needed Kuma to save us in the end. I personally don't like that on paper, but, you know, if Oda spins it in a good way, then maybe I'll change my mind. I don't know. Again, another one of the reasons is just narratively where we're at is just we're also set up for Luffy to meet Shanks fairly soon, which is why I don't think like leaving Egghead Island on an L essentially, or like being made to feel helpless again or having to be saved, and then Luffy going to meet Shanks, I don't think that feels quite right, because the reunion with Shanks, it's meant to feel like it comes at a moment where Luffy has really finally come of age, reached his potential in many ways, and is able to meet Shanks on equal footing, not as a kid that needs to be protected anymore. Kenny says, can you be on social media and not be spoiled? I definitely think so. Because there's it depends on what you follow on social media, right? So if I'm interested in One Piece and by extension manga and anime stuff, that's what's going to come on my feed, right? But for example, I don't follow baseball at all, right? I have no interest in MLB. I never click anything baseball. I don't think I've ever clicked anything, liked anything, looked at any tweet or anything like that that's baseball related. And what do you know? I never get baseball shit on my feed ever, right? I'm never spoiled on what happens in like a baseball game or something like that, you know? So it's easily avoidable. NFL, same thing for the most part. I think the only reason some NFL stuff, like, there's some stuff going on with like Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, and I think that's just like becoming like bigger than either one of those groups to the point that it's showing up on my feed. Doesn't help that I did start listening to Travis and Jason Kelce's podcast for no reason. Literally, I don't follow football, but I found it interesting that these two brothers have a podcast, and I'm like, isn't that they played in the Super Bowl against each other? So I found that interesting enough to listen to that. So maybe that's why I've had some more NFL stuff related stuff enter my feed. But for the most part, anything you're not actually interested in isn't really going to show up in your feed unless it's huge, like obviously worldwide news such as what's going on with Israel-Palestine at the moment. But for the most part, like, yeah, you're not going to get spoiled if you're really, really not interested, you know? Like, yeah. Jujutsu Kaisen, I wonder if the stuff that happened there was big enough that it did actually spoil some people who don't even follow anime manga. I don't know. Papa Dog Sucker, I mean, I do have friends. Like, I am aware of people who are dabble in anime and got spoiled on it. I don't know if I know, like, I'm trying to think, like, would my mom using Twitter have gotten spoiled on Jujutsu Kaisen? She probably wouldn't even know if she did, you know? Papa Dog Sucker, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 12 months. Usopp KO Saturn with Conquerors, and my ex takes me back to celebrate. That... anything is possible, man. John678, thanks for the 10. Luffy couldn't even hide if Kizaru, and now you want him to defeat Saturn in the first arc. He actually got screen time. This is Sabaody 2.0. They lose to Gorosei and are forced to regroup in Elbaf. Again, I just think that the tone of this arc so far has been very different from Sabaody. I think this is the first chapter that had a sort of serious tone for Luffy and the crew. This is like, even in the Luffy Kizaru fight, like, it was very light work. Like, you say like Luffy didn't low diff him, obviously, but you know, Luffy wasn't really stressed throughout that whole battle. Like, it's very different from like the tone of Luffy and this crew versus the Pacifista before Sentomaru and Kizaru then started showing up. And again, if they lose to a Gorosei and are forced to regroup in Elbaf, I think that basically shits on the idea of a lot of Luffy's growth, him becoming a Yonko, everything like that. And it's just a sad way to reunite with Shanks, because we've had it established already that Shanks doesn't want to see Luffy on the back of an L, right? That was the point of avoiding their reunion at Marine Ford. Shanks didn't even think Luffy was ready to see him after Whole Cake Island. He was like, you're almost there. So it was only after Wano that he was like, okay, now Luffy's pretty much there. But then instead, if he's meeting Luffy on the back of an L, I don't know. Feels kind of weird to me. You want him to defeat Saturn in the first arc, he actually gets screen time. I mean, yeah, a lot of villains are defeated in the first arc that they actually get screen time. That's usually how shit goes. I think that what I feel is very, very possible is that Luffy doesn't just beat him straight up, but again, if it's a team effort or something like that. Like, I don't think it'll be easy for Luffy by any means, and I think that it'll take a lot, and I think he might have to rely on his crew. But I don't know if I think that that Saturn being defeated ultimately with Luffy giving the finishing blow is that crazy. Why are people spamming Wano review? TCB just showed up and said it. God damn it. McDonald's, thanks for the 2. Have you seen the new Berserk fan adaptation? I saw like a clip of it. It didn't look that good to me. I also feel like I just think Berserk is I genuinely think it's too difficult to animate. I really do. I think it's too difficult to animate and do it justice because it's the artwork is one. I think it's a series that works better in black and white, and two, it's just the artwork is just too much a part of what the story. It's just too intrinsic to what Berserk is. I think it's really, really hard to animate that. Like, I think you could animate individual moments, but there's never been an anime even the best produced anime adaptations I've ever seen. I'm like, even that, if you took that quality, even that quality consistently, that'd be hard to capture Berserk. It's just too. The artistry of Berserk is just something totally different, man. TCB says ignored. It's over. It's not. It's just I don't have anything new to say on it. Sage07 says folks are forgetting that at the start of the arc it was stated that the world changed because of the Egghead incident, so most likely Straw Hats are ending the arc with a W. I mean, it could mean multiple things. Maybe it doesn't mean that the Straw Hats end with a W. Maybe their defeat is so legendary that it changes the world. I mean, like, it could. I think if I had to guess, I feel like a whole cake-ish thing seems about right. Like, I don't think it'll be like an overjoyed, super happy sort of way of leaving. Maybe it is. Like, maybe it's Enies Lobby type vibes. But, as they're sailing away from Enies Lobby. But I think Whole Cake Island feels similar-ish to what I feel like this could be like. I don't know. GDN says, what if Kizaru is the 10th Strahd commander like Kuzan? No. No, get him out of here. I don't literally want Kizaru the crew. Alright, guys. We're going to do some polls now. Alright. Okay. How do I even do this? Okay. Who is most likely to be... Okay. We're just going to match them up one at a time. And then we're going to rank based off of that. I'm going to say most likely to be involved in Saturn's defeat. So no one has to necessarily be the one to do it single-handed. But we are going to do it one at a time. Right? So do you think Kizaru is more likely to be involved or Luffy? If you got to pick one or the other, who's got a better shot? And I think that is an easy win for Luffy. So we're going to keep that in mind. Here's the next one. And this one's pretty tricky. Because I know how much you guys like this fucking mute. This fucking mute-ass robot. But who is more likely to be involved in Saturn's defeat? Kizaru or Iron Giant? I wonder if Oda likes the movie Iron Giant. Oda says that he used to watch a lot of movies. I feel like he probably watched that one. Oh, man, Kizaru... Oh, okay. It's pretty tight. Damn, Kizaru can't even beat a robot in this poll context. Okay. So it looks like... Yeah, Iron Giant wins. Alright, so right now the rankings are basically Luffy, then Giant, then Kizaru, right? I imagine most people have Luffy above the Giant. Alright, how about... I'm not going to include Chopper with 4 Rumble Balls because this is a gag answer, so we're going to put him at last automatically. How about Kizaru... Okay. How about Kizaru versus Luffy and Devon? Yeah, Oda is a big fan of Castle in the Sky. I would assume. So that does matter there. Castle in the... I'm curious, what's people's favorite... Let's not say Ghibli, let's say specifically Miyazaki movie. Because I'm usually I'm between 3. Howl's Moving Castle was the first one I ever saw. So there's always nostalgia for that for me. I feel like if I lean towards one, that would be my favorite just because it's the first one I saw. I don't know if I would think. I don't think I would think that if I saw that in some other order. I don't think it doesn't. I don't think it does that much better than most of the other Miyazaki movies. But again, because I saw that first, that kind of just always hits the hardest for me. And then after that, in between Momonoke and Castle in the Sky. And I think I like the story of Castle in the Sky the best and the concept, but Momonosuke is a much more impressive and artistic film, if that makes sense. It depends kind of what in the mood I'm in. Toy Story? That's a good one. Yeah, I think Momonoke is, in my opinion, I think it's the most impressively done Miyazaki movie. I've never seen Kiki's. Oh, it's tight between Kizaru and Lafitte Devon. Alright, so right now, the ranking as it looks like is Luffy, then the Iron Giant, then Kizaru, then Katarina Devon and Lafitte. Alright, let's do this one then. Who is more likely between, and this one's going to be tricky, Dragon or the Iron Giant? Let's see how bet you guys are on Dragon. The Angry Birds movie, Shrek 3. I'm not gonna lie, when I was young and I saw Shrek 3, I thought Shrek 3 was good. It was it was initially, like, when I walked out of theaters, I wasn't even that young. I think I was in like 6th grade. I was old enough that I should have known better. What year did Shrek 3 come out? Yeah, I was in 6th grade, basically. When I went and saw Shrek 3, I walked out of the theaters thinking that, to be fair though, this was a young kid mentality. When I was younger, like, when I was in elementary through probably like 6th grade-ish, I was of the mentality that, like, anytime a movie sequel came out to something I already liked, I wanted the sequel to be better. So I was always just like, I like the number, like, I would always just automatically be like, oh, the sequel is better than the first one. The sequel's like, or the third one's even better than the first two. I was always biased towards that because I always just wanted the next thing to be even better than before. There were some exceptions. Like, I obviously knew that Lion King is way better than Lion King 2. But in general, I'd be like, oh, I love Pirates of the Caribbean, but I like Pirates of the Caribbean 2 even more. And I like Pirates of the Caribbean 3 the best. And then later on, my opinions changed as I went back and looked at those. So when Shrek 3 came out, I walked out of the theaters being like, I can't believe that was like the best Shrek. That's the best Shrek movie ever. And then over time, I thought about it. I was like, that movie was... Why did that movie even exist? It added nothing to the story of Shrek. Shrek didn't want to have kids or something. Like, he was upset with his kids or some shit like that. I forget. Like, he didn't want to be a dad. Shrek 2 is a really good Shrek movie. I still think the original Shrek is maybe the best, but Shrek 2 is a special spot in my heart. I might actually like Shrek 2 better than Shrek. Mr. Nkaye, thanks for saying Shrek 2 is the best Shrek, to be honest. Alright, so it looks like... Okay, Iron Giant beats Dragon. Fuck, this is getting complicated. Alright, so it's looking like the... Okay, let's get Sanji in there. How do we think Sanji does? I'm kind of keeping track. Who's more likely to be involved in Saturn's defeat? Because so far the rankings, it looked like Luffy is above the Iron Giant, is above... People had Kizaru above... Wait, what? Did people have Kizaru above Lafitte and Katarina Devon, I'm pretty sure? Yeah. People had then Kizaru, then Lafitte, Katarina Devon. And then Dragon kind of fucked it up. Because we know that Dragon is below the Iron Giant, but we don't know if he's above Kizaru yet. Actually, let's just figure that out now. Dragon, Kizaru. So at the moment, the rankings are going like Luffy, Iron Giant. Let me make this smaller. We'll enlarge this when the time comes. These are preliminary rankings happening on the side. Luffy, Iron Giant. Then people had Kizaru above Lafitte above Lafitte / Katarina. And those were the rankings as we had them. Now we're trying to figure out... Okay, Kizaru and Dragon. This is a real matchup. All right, everybody vote. Get your votes in. Also, while you're at it, get the stream likes up to 500. Would appreciate that. Yeah, get your votes in for this one. This one's really fucking tight. And then I watched Shrek 4. Okay, I did watch Shrek 4 in theaters just to see it out. And I watched it by myself, by the way. Nobody else in my family wanted to watch it. So I went to the theaters. It was one of those times we all went to the movies and we all watched different movies. So, what year did Shrek 4 come out? I feel like it was like a few years later. Yeah, so Shrek 4, I was in 9th grade. So I guess I still wanted to see what they did with the final Shrek movie, I guess. So I went and watched Shrek 4 in theaters. And at that point, I could tell it was just really, really bad. And I really fucking hated the story. Did Shrek have kids in Shrek 3? I feel like the end of Shrek the Third was Shrek having kids. And then Shrek 4 was him not wanting to be a dad or something. Or like him wishing that he had never married Fiona or something like that. Shrek 4 was just bizarre because it was just replaying the old story beats, but in a twist. Alright, I'm going to end this poll in 5 seconds. Get your final votes in. Alright, we can do a poll for Shrek versus Shrek 2. Oh, Mr. NK. Okay, it's supposed to be NK. I forgot. Mr. NK. R.I.P. Morj, never getting my name right. NK. Alright, sorry, man. Alright, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Eric says Morj. Oda already foreshadowed who will defeat the Spider Saturn. It's Brook. He defeated the Spider guy from Thriller Bark. Bravo, Vince. That's not a bad idea. That's not a bad point. Brook coming in to defeat one of the Gorosei? That'd be insane. So people think Dragon is more... People are really, really strongly believing that Dragon's got a good shot at showing up at Egghead. Interesting. It barely edging out Kizaru. Alright. Let's see how Sanji works his way... Well, let's do it in order. Kuma. No. First poll. More important. Which do you like better? Shrek 2. Not which you... I think Shrek is maybe ultimately the better movie just because more innovative for its time, whatever you want to say. I think we got deeper into... I don't know. I think more was established out of Shrek. Like just more iconic shit came out of Shrek. But Shrek 2, I really like the story. Like, I feel like they went a very organic direction with the characters. And it was kind of the cheap thing of like, oh, they have to meet the in-laws. Like, it's fucking Meet the Fockers or whatever. But I think they got a really good story out of it, to be honest. And I think the final sequence of Shrek 2, the I Need a Hero bit, it's fucking awesome. It's like, it's very cinematic for an animated movie. The whole jailbreak out all through that. Yeah, I'm not surprised. I think Shrek 2 is more endearing. Like, Shrek, the first one, probably hits that sort of angle for an animated movie for the first time of, like, really examining what it is to be, like, this, like this freakish, ugly, outcast dude. You could say Hunchback of Notre Dame, but it was different, very different story, right? And ideas of inner beauty, etc. I think Shrek really, really did a lot of that with a very, very unorthodox character. But Shrek 2 is just endearing. You get Puss in Boots, you get fun characters. It's a more fun storyline, I think, overall, and also still gets to a pretty deep place. All right, Shrek 2 wins. I feel happy that everybody's on board, or a lot of people are on board with Shrek 2. I think there's no wrong answer there. I mean, it's what do you like better? There's no wrong answer, period. But you know, either are great picks. Tala, thanks for bringing Yonko to your member for 8 months. People complain about Sanji being used for hype, but beating anyone weaker than him amongst the crew isn't hype. He's the weakest, really strong character. Yeah, that's the thing. I think I was talking about it last stream, maybe, which is just like, beating Jinbei, I don't know how much weight that necessarily carries, you know? I mean, Jinbei is very strong, but we never quite know exactly. Like, he beat his only big thing that he did was his only big one-on-one win was against Who's Who, right? He's already had great little showings against like Big Mom, you know, stuff like that. But it's just, I don't think Oda would use Jinbei or even Frankie or something. Like, doing stuff to Frankie doesn't mean that much. Even doing stuff to Jinbei doesn't mean that much at the end of the day. Yeah, unfortunately, Sanji's in that spot of being the weakest, really strong character, right? I've said it before, like, with Oda, like, with Luffy, right? Luffy gets the biggest wins, so Oda's fine having him lose or like look bad in lots of situations, because at the end of the day, Luffy's going to do the most impressive thing, right? Then Zoro's second, and Zoro's not going to get the wins that Luffy does, but Oda still wants him to look cool. So the flip side is that Oda he doesn't have Zoro do the biggest stuff that Luffy does, but he also rarely has Zoro look bad, right? And then that's why Sanji will just ultimately get the short end of the stick, because he's not supposed to be quite as important of a fighter as Luffy or Zoro. That's not the most, or that's not, relative to them, it's not quite as defining of a trait of his character. It's still very important to him and his role in the story, but simply because, you know, Luffy's got the high highs, so it's okay with him having some bad showings. Zoro's got not quite as high highs, but Oda will kind of keep him protected in that case to maintain his image. And so then you got Sanji, who, like, he will occasionally have really good showings, but for the most part, Oda is okay using him for bad showings to show off other characters. So that's rough. And with that, we can talk about Sanji. Well, let's do Kuma first. We'll go in order, as I've been saying. Ramenstein says, as a Shrek fanatic, Shrek 4 is pretty good, honestly. I mean, I think it's okay, because you get to sort of re-experience a lot of the original beats, like taking on the dragon and stuff again, but this time it's in, like, you know, flipped topsy-turvy upside down context. I could see enjoying Shrek, but to me, just the story felt lazy and just like, well, they need to pull something out of their ass, so like, oh, hey, what if instead of Shrek's story being like this, we just flipped it and pretended that this stuff never happened or something? I don't know. Kit Spikin says, I picked Shrek 2, but I literally only remember the giant gingerbread man. But that's the thing, though. That whole sequence was epic. JWP, thanks for 5. The opening sequence in Shrek with All-Star is peak, sets up great vibes. Yeah, that sounds weird, but that shit was revolutionary for its time in the animated, like, children's animated medium. The All-Star sequence is iconic, and it is a great sequence. I still remember, like, a lot of the little stuff he does, like taking stuff out of the mud, like, you know, I think slugs or frogs were involved and stuff like that. Ray Chia, thanks for the 5. Since we're talking about Shrek, can we take this time to remember Steve Harwell? Let me look up who that is. Oh, he was the lead vocalist for Smash Mouth. Oh shit, I didn't know he passed away. He passed away on September 4th this year? Holy shit, he was only 56 years old? Oh my god. Wow. Yeah, rest in peace. I didn't know that. That is crazy. I didn't mean to bring up Shrek because of that. I didn't even know about that. Masan Rasat says, skip, get to One Piece. Alright, let's start. Okay. Alright. Okay, I'm gonna say Kuma versus. So right now, Dragon and Kizaru is the closest one, right? So who's more likely to be involved, Dragon or Kuma? Here's the thing, and I'll add this in before you guys start voting. I think that if Dragon shows up, Kuma has to be on the island, right? I think, like, it's just more like. I think it's hard to imagine a scenario to me right now where Dragon would be at Egghead, but Kuma wouldn't be, right? It's either Kuma's at Egghead or Kuma shows up and Dragon shows up, but I think it's unlikely that Dragon just shows up there and Kuma doesn't, in my opinion. Yeah, I should have put Kuma right up against the Iron Giant right away. My mistake. Let me end this poll. All right. Jose Laurie says, Billy Bob, yo bro, Morj upset, Lucci fighting Zoro still, so he's downplaying Sanji as usual. I put Sanji in the thumbnail. Sanji's in the thumbnail. He's in the thumbnail. I didn't put Zoro in the thumbnail. If you listen to me from the beginning of this stream, I've been saying that I think that it's very, very possible that Sanji is involved in Saturn's defeat. I think it's more likely that Sanji is involved in Saturn's defeat than Zoro is. If you're thinking like, oh, Morj put Sanji at 8th last, that's that's just the order that I didn't rank these in order that I think are most likely. Like, I don't think Kizaru is more likely than, like, I don't think Chopper with 4 Rumble Balls is more likely than Kuma. This is just as I was. It's just the organic route that popped up over the course of the stream. This is where we're doing the ranking. We're trying to figure out who's more likely. Okay, so the Iron Giant beats out Kuma just a little bit, which I think makes sense at the end of the day because no matter how you spin it, like, the Iron Giant is here. It's factually doing shit right now. Whereas Kuma, God knows where the fuck he is, where he's going. We can assume he's headed to Egghead, right? But that's at the end of the day an assumption. All right, Iron Giant beats... This Iron Giant, man, I really didn't think that it would go all the way here. Like, it's in second place. Holy shit. All right. But is the Iron Giant more likely than the person that you are claiming I'm downplaying right now? Is the Iron Giant more likely than Sanji? I think Sanji is more likely to be involved in the defeat of Saturn than the Iron Giant, personally. Oh, this is gonna be a tight one. This is a tight one. We got a battle here. I hope Sanji could beat out a random animatronic that we just met. Let's get the stream likes to 500 real quick. Kenny says Iron Giant goated. It hasn't done anything. I mean, there's so much, like, the fact that the Iron Giant is waking up right now, Kuma climbing the red line at the same time. There's a lot of symbolism that Oda's, just a lot of symbolism of the idea of rebellion and everything like that Oda's invoking right now. Like Kuma as a robot doing the same thing that the original robot did, 200 years ago. It's a cool idea. All right, Sanji's taking it. Might have been a bit from my goating and like me voicing my support of Sanji, I suppose. So maybe slightly rigged there. But Sanji does technically win. I'll give you guys 5 more seconds because it's pretty tight. Not a Pro 64 says, has Dragon done anything? No, but I still partially feel like it's, even now, it might be a bit too early for Dragon to make his move. Papa Dog Sucker says, I think it's Iron Giant, but I'm a Sanji fan, so it's tight. I'll give it 3, 2, 1. All right, there you have it. And people said that I shouldn't have had Sanji in the thumbnail, but look at that. According to y'all, Sanji's the second most wait a second. We got to do one more thing, just to see, just for old time's sake, got to run the classic. All right, what do people think here? I don't even have Zoro on the list personally, but I'm just curious. All right, nice to see some Sanji support. I half put that up. I put that up half expecting that Zoro would just win the poll regardless, just out of sheer love for the character that many people have. So I was kind of just like, yeah, it doesn't really matter if Zoro's off fighting Lucci and Sanji's standing right in front of Saturn. I would not be surprised if ultimately people voted Zoro over Sanji for being more likely to be involved in Saturn's defeat. But this is nice to see. Ramen Stain says, having seen the 90s movie, Iron Giant is top 5, low diff Saturn easy. There's also I think it's more likely Oda might be inspired by the Castle in the Sky stuff. And in that movie, the giant robots are basically, you can't fuck with them at all. It's just ancient tech that can't be dealt with. And then we'll put no need to rank at that point. Let's say BB Pirates. Whoops. All right, so there we have it. This is our final ranking. This is it. I did say initially that this would just be a makeshift sort of thing, but it doesn't have to be. This could be it. This is the final ranking. Eric, welcome to the Yonko. Thanks for joining. Watch out for the weekly Yonko podcast that comes out every Friday. Yeah, make sure you don't miss this week's, whatever. How do I make this bigger without wanted to take up more space. Okay. English D1, thank you. Wiper comes down with Uruj and clean sweeps Egghead. Man, Wiper's such a great character, man. I know Oda's never gonna bring Wiper back because it would be, if it's like either he brings back Wiper and Wiper has continued to scale in strength relative to the Straw Hats, in which case Wiper would just be too strong. He'd be like basically Luffy level. Or Oda's had Wiper not train at all, in which case if you bring Wiper back, or maybe only like a moderate amount of training. What color do I make this? In which case, if you bring Wiper back, it would just be disrespectful to Wiper's legacy. It's like, oh man, now he's just this weak character. What color do I make this? Do I make this? Nah. Needs the right color. All right, we'll do orange. Orange is ugly. We'll do green. Green? Yeah, I think green's too light. I'm having a revelation. I can only really use red and black for this shit. Microsoft Paint might be more limited than I thought. Sean Easton says, speaking of Shrek, did you see the new Puss in Boots in theaters? Also, do you think Kuma is heading to his memories? Could have him have a fight. So I didn't see the new Puss in Boots. I heard so many good things, and because I heard so many good things, what I did was like, I was like, how good could the new Puss in Boots fucking movie be? So I went and watched some clips. Namely, so as not to spoil people, namely regarding Puss and a certain wolf, the big bad wolf. That's not a spoiler. That's in the trailers of the movie, right? So I saw stuff regarding Puss and the big bad wolf. And I thought that was so interesting and so phenomenally done and so phenomenally animated that I just ended up watching, I feel like I ended up watching 60-ish% of that movie purely through YouTube clips. So I haven't seen the full movie, but I kind of fucked up where I watched so many YouTube clips of the movie, and I kind of basically pieced together the general order and chronological flow. I basically know the majority of the plot of the movie, and I think I've seen all of the major highlights. So there wouldn't be a point. At some point, maybe if I'm on a plane or something like that, maybe I'll watch the full Puss in Boots movie from start to finish, but I've seen so much of it. First of all, thematically, what they chose to do is really, really dark for a children's movie. So that's a very interesting angle that they chose to take, and I think a really, really creative route of how they chose to portray what they wanted to portray. The conflict that the character's going through, and the type of enemy that he's trying to defeat, right? And then animation-wise, it was fucking beautiful. I felt like I was watching, like 11 out of 10 anime battle, basically, at the finale. So, like the best anime battle, like one of the best anime battles you'll ever see. So, really, really fucking impressed with what they did with the Puss in Boots. Cool to see that franchise, they're not just milking it for cash, I guess, but they're still trying to do interesting, innovative stuff with it and tell stories that, I guess, that progress from just being a spin-off of Shrek. Do I think Kuma is headed to his memories? Could have him have a fight. I really like it's tricky because if Kuma could get his memories back temporarily, that'd be cool, but I like the idea that there was a sense of finality to Kuma sacrificing his autonomy and his memories, and this is kind of the last sliver of what he has left that he's giving up. Even just in the latest chapter, right? Like if we go back and look at the dialogue, what's being said? What's Bonnie saying at the end? She's saying, I haven't seen the Viz translation for it just yet. At the end of the last chapter, Bonnie's saying, I've given the order, erase his individuality completely, make sure no trace of him remains, but if we do that, Kuma... I like the idea that there was real consequence to that. And whatever the reason Kuma made the sacrifice, it was worth it for the reasons that... worth it to give up that much. I like that. So, I would prefer if Kuma doesn't get back his memories, but at the same time, we know so little of his story that maybe if we get the backstory, I would feel like, oh, him getting back his memories would feel really right. Could have him have a fight. Yeah, I like the idea, again, that we saw him do an Ursa Shock against the Celestial Dragons. Some moment of rebellion against the Gorosei member, I think that could be good. JWP says, last Pirate King podcast was the best one. I'm glad you enjoyed it. For those of you who don't know, the last Pirate King podcast, hour long, it definitely got into some more just real life stuff that a lot of One Piece talk, a lot of talk about final characters and their roles in the final saga. But then I enjoyed it because a lot of just real life talk involved as well, and just questions pertaining to, I don't know, how you approach certain things in general, and also just fun stuff. Like we talked a lot about Dark Souls, so I don't know. I don't want to get too in depth into what it was about, but yeah, that's a podcast where you can basically just ask a lot of questions that are more in depth that I just wouldn't. In depth or personal or like outside the scope of One Piece that I just wouldn't talk about here, if any of you are interested. Ramen Stain says the real question: Iron Giant for Nakama. I'm really interested in if it affects any of like Frankie's engineering or something like that. If he takes inspiration, but I don't think Iron Giant for Nakama. Jens Rambo, thanks for the 2. What made you put Laffy? Do you think he fights Sanji? Right now I don't think. Like maybe towards the end of the story he fights Sanji, but some people were saying early on that like, the reason I have Laffy and Katarina Devon is the reason that is mentioned here. If there's a plot twist at the end where maybe Saturn's already on the brink of defeat, and then they come in and give the finishing blow, or they come in and capture him to take him back to Blackbeard for hostage negotiation. People were mentioning that Blackbeard is looking for some sort of leverage over the world government, or alternatively, they just kill him, backstab him, get his fruit, and then Blackbeard gets a powerful Zoan fruit. So just the question of what Laffy and Katarina Devon exist for, like, what are they going to do? Virgil Hawkins, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 12 months. You've won the lottery. What becomes first priority between filmmaking, YouTube, and your business? You should check out Witch Hat Atelier for breathtaking art, creative paneling, and all-around great presentation. Ooh, those are great. That's a great question. How much money did I win in the lottery? If I won in the realm of like a couple million plus, I think almost no matter what, the smartest move is to invest in business, because it's just that guarantees that basically you can turn the money into something sustaining long term, and then that way, in theory, if you're willing to wait a couple years or whatever, you will eventually have the money again to be able to make the project that you want to make, which for me is a movie, right? So if it is a good amount of money, yeah, I would probably invest it back into business, basically, because the goal is to have a fund. Like, I don't want to be broke and spend everything I have on the movie and then have nothing else. I would like to set up something that basically within a few years I'd be able to just spend everything again on the movie. So I think the smarter thing would be to do that. So not necessarily because I want to wait on the movie, but because it would just be the smarter route to go about it that way, in my opinion. Because that way you get both, essentially, right? If you play your cards right, which you should be able to with, a lottery's worth amount of money. Witch Hat Atelier for breathtaking art, creative paneling, and all-around great presentation. I've heard about that one. Let me take a look. When you guys mention stuff to me, I do actually keep it open in like a little tab to look at later. Like, people were saying I should check out Kakegurui. I've got that here. Kaiji. Yeah, stuff like that. So I will check it out at some point. Witch Hat Atelier. Oh, that's good. The artwork's kind of cool. It's a seinen. It sounds like a magical girl series, which is why, like Sailor Moony, which is why I'm like, I don't know if that'd be my interest, but I'll take a look into it. Really beautiful story. Interesting. Lucas Flores says, Morj, what if I defeat Saturn? That'd be quite impressive. Okay, back to this final version of this. Chats most likely. I still don't like this color. What's wrong with this color? Is there like a darker blue I can do? Let's see. I hate having to go into this shit. I feel like all the colors that are most useful to me should just be available. I didn't like this, but we'll just roll with it. Kaiji's amazing. Action's so good. I think the first thing I want to read is Fire Punch, probably. Fire Punch, I've been really wanting to read Kingdom. And some people have even convinced me. Some people have convinced me that I should just try Vagabond, even though it's not going to end ever. Don, I think people talked about that as well, but unless I'm mixing that up with another thing. Oh, I've heard of this one. Papa Dog Sucker says you forgot Chopper 4 Rumble Balls. I think we can just assume that that's at the bottom. Oh, I should have said Bonnie. Well, I don't know. Bonnie's already involved, you know, so it's not really fair to say anything. She landed the first blow. Anujagrawal says the pirate hero comes back to beat Saturn after all these years. Just read Berserk. I've read Berserk. Well, I'm not reading Berserk anymore. Don is a god tier manga, has a great first chapter. Kelvin, thanks for the 5. Is Luffy the only Zoan awakening with the white clouds, or could it be that the color of the clouds is dependent on whether the character is good or not? I'm just not reading into... I hope that that's not the case, because I think that that's a little too, you know, that very, very literally it is too black and white. Also, I feel like... What color... Kaku awakening, let's see. Kaku is black clouds, right? I don't think Kaku's even that bad of a guy. He is, I guess. He's on the bad guy's side. But, I don't know. Yamato had white clouds, so there is some level of possibility to this theory, but I personally wouldn't like it if it were true. Just me personally. Supersonic Squad says, no way Bonnie's beating Saturn, lol. Yeah, of course not, but involved in beating Saturn. Technically, she's already involved to a degree. The story and characters are lacking depth in Dandadan's Masan Rasat. Yeah, I've just got a long list at the moment. I gotta get through some stuff. Demon Slayer, I've followed the story in the anime. Kingdom. Yeah, I gotta read Kingdom. I really liked Kingdom's first arc. Here's something I'll say about Kingdom, right? Because I thought about it for a bit. I think I've talked about this before on stream, but I'll just reiterate, right? Why I stopped reading Kingdom after its first arc. This is the most minor of minor spoilers, right? Kingdom has an initial opening arc, which I think is very good, by the way. It is probably the most... It tells probably the long... How do I say this? Most stories' opening arcs tend to be pretty short and tight and don't attempt to do too much, if that makes sense. Like, it's just establishing stuff. I think Kingdom is the first story that, in the first arc, it's telling a real full story, like a full sort of journey and setting up a world and setting up a lot of characters, and there's a fairly large conflict that is dealt with, right, within its first arc. And then there's a time skip. Again, this is not really big spoilers in my opinion, just because this all happens, like, in the first, it's not even East Blue length, basically what I'm talking about. It's really early into the story, okay? But that's a very involved first arc, right? And then it's got a time skip, okay? It's basically the prologue of the story that I'm describing to you. So just think about it like that, okay? The problem is that I think that for me, for a lot of stories, I need something, once I'm into the story, I need something that's moving me along from one arc to the next arc, right? So if I read Chainsaw Man, anytime an arc finishes, there's stuff being set up for the next arc, or like the plot's getting more exciting. One Piece, phenomenal at that, right? One Piece becomes better at like hooking you from one arc to the next. Naruto, same thing, you know, they get back from this mist village and then right away it's like, now we're starting this tournament or whatever, right? Bleach, same shit. My Hero, same shit. Every arc is feeding into the next arc and setting up the plot points to the next arc. Kingdom, I think, is the only storyline, the only manga I've read where the first arc finishes and it's a phenomenal first arc, and then there's a time skip, and there's not really anything. There's like a very limited sense of momentum or like loose, because there's a time skip. There's like almost no loose threads or like big new plot development or something that's taking you, like, I almost feel like I concluded a story right there within that first arc. And, you know, now the story kind of takes a break and resets, and like now some new stuff is going to be set up, established from the ground up. You get what I'm saying? So it's not as though arc number 1 is flowing into arc number 2 and like pulling the reader in, like, okay, this just finished, but now come this way or whatever. It's like arc 1 finishes, and it finishes in a very cohesive, coherent, yeah, just generally ties up a lot of stuff sort of way, right? It sets some stuff up for the future down the line, but nothing directly from A to B. Because of that, I finished the first arc, realized that there was a little bit of a time skip, and I was just like, okay, I really like this story. I'm definitely going to pick it up again. But a week goes by, like, I had to take a break from reading for a moment, and then, you know, there wasn't anything really pulling me back in, because there's not like a plot thread that's hanging in my head or something like that from the series. That's not a flaw of the story at all, because I understand that the first arc feels more like a prologue than anything. I'm just explaining why, you know, once I got into certain arcs, like certain stories or whatever, you know, you just keep getting pulled along, right? Like, I didn't stop watching Bleach because arc number 1 leads into Soul Society, you know, like I didn't stop watching Naruto because this arc directly is leading into Chunin exam, which is then directly leading into the next one, and then the Sasuke retrieval thing and stuff like that. So yeah, I think just that early in a series, having a bit of a break after the first arc, it's an opportunity to potentially lose some readers. Again, not a flaw of the story. That's a flaw of me, I suppose. I just took a break, didn't feel a strong urge to go back, even though I remember the story was good. Isaiah Davis, thanks for the 10. What are the odds the Iron Giant attacks Luffy? Think Sentinels from X-Men. Its main objective is to kill Joy Boy, or the Iron Giant attack Marijua to... Okay, let me read this again. The Iron Giant attacks Luffy, like the Sentinels from X-Men. Its main objective is to kill Joy Boy. The Iron Giant attacked Marijua 200 years ago because it sensed Joy Boy. I like to think that the Iron Giant is on the side of rebellion against the world government, simply because the symbolism of being one to climb up the red line signifies that, right? So I would think that it would be on the side of Joy Boy, but it is an interesting spin that maybe it's programmed to kill Joy Boy, and that's why it woke up. Kelvin says, did you have this experience with JoJo's? JoJo's, I had to fucking, like, I genuinely did not think JoJo's was good. I thought it was straight up bad when I read part 1. No, I watched part 1. I switched over to the manga much later, right? But JoJo's I only powered through because it's such a popular series and people kept saying that it gets really good. But I really had to fucking drag myself through JoJo's, you know? Like, Kingdom I will get back to because I want to, and because people say it's good. It's just been on hold for a bit because I just don't have that much time these days to get into a really long series, but I will at some point. JoJo's and I like JoJo's quite a bit now. It's just, I had to really force myself to get through part 1. Part 2, I probably would have dropped if Joseph wasn't such a likable main character. And even part 3, I had to get, like, a good ways through before I started really vibing with it. Because my experience with part 3, watching the anime, was basically like, I would not enjoy several stand battles, and then there would be one that I kind of, like, really like. And or like enjoy moderately. I'd be like, okay, this episode was fun. I like this episode dealing with this stand user, right? Okay, maybe the series sort of really picks up from here. And then the next 2 stand battles would be kind of boring to me. Like, I felt there was no sort of, in part 3, I felt like there was no sort of rhythm of like improving quality. It was kind of like, you hit some gold, you hit some garbage, you hit some gold, you hit some garbage. The plot is also very like monster of the villain of the week. Like, there's pretty much nothing changing during their entire journey except what country they happen to be in. But that's not to knock it, because over time I did slowly just start enjoying that sort of, okay, what are we getting next? Maybe I'll like it, maybe I won't like it that much, but it'll still be something interesting and fun to some degree. And then you just start enjoying the whole JoJo's vibe. And by the end of part 3, I was on board. I enjoyed JoJo's by the end of part 3. Part 4 I really, really liked. Part 5 I really, really liked. Like, you know, once you're into it, you're into it. Kelvin says part 5 is a masterpiece in my opinion. I think the anime part 5 I could see it being really good. Like, people have said that the manga for Part 5 is not that good, and I could understand that because I think the anime production of Part 5 is the highest quality anime production out of the 6 JoJo's parts. But I could see the story not being quite as sharp. I think it had great stand battles, though. I didn't resonate with most of the characters with Part 5 too much. Like, I didn't enjoy... JoJo's generally, before Part 7, I don't think JoJo's characters had that much writing depth in general, but I just didn't even enjoy the squad we dealt with Part 5 that much. Like, they were fun. I like Mista. Giorno was kind of boring to me. Bucciarati I kind of enjoyed. But I like the Stardust Crusaders and the Morio Town, like, sort of homey, more homey, comfy feel, I think, a little bit better. And the Stardust Crusaders had more enjoyable personalities for me. Jesse Upperman, thanks a lot. What if other Zoans ate the Rumble Ball? Saturn? Question mark. I don't know. And it's interesting that we've never encountered that. I thought that was something that was going to come up in Wano, just because it's a island where Zone users are very prominent. And, you know, you would think that something could have come, like Chopper's experimented with Zone fruits, like something could have come up there, like, because he's got an ability to boost the abilities of Zone fruits so much. I think that we might never actually end up seeing other Zone users eat Chopper's Rumble Ball, because I think that might just open up a whole can of worms where it's suddenly like, okay, if it can make Chopper that powerful, then like a Gorosei member eating a Rumble Ball would just be insane. And then it's like, okay, well, now if we want to, like, you can't just show us one Gorosei eating the Rumble Ball. It's like, what happens if they all... I guess, like, once you start opening up the possibilities of certain Zoans eating Rumble Balls, then we want to see pretty much as many Zoan users unlock these new levels as possible, you know, and that gets kind of out of hand. Like Luffy eating a Rumble Ball. In theory, that could do so much for him. It shouldn't, though, because his fruit should already be pretty much limitless. I don't know. Maybe Luffy's a bad example. But I think Oda might just not want to have to deal with thinking of, like, several new transformations for every Zoan user. Because I think part of the fun or simplicity... Like, Oda's got to write so many abilities into One Piece that... Probably part of the appeal of Zoan-type characters is that he doesn't have to do that much thinking with their abilities once he's picked a Zoan character, because it's like the abilities are just whatever the mythical creature's abilities are. That's pretty much all you got to do, right? You know, it's like Jack's a fucking mammoth. It doesn't mean anything other than Jack's just physically stronger in his Zoan form than whatever. You know, Marco's a phoenix. Okay, it has phoenix abilities of just, you know, being able to regenerate and fly. Sounds good. And heal, right? All makes sense. So I think that's probably a big appeal of Zoan type abilities compared to something like, you know, if you've got Doflamingo's string fruit, then Oda's got to think of like a million different ways that the string fruit can be used in Dangerous, right? But then once you incorporate Chopper stuff, then if characters eat the Rumble Ball, then suddenly Oda's got to get really, really complicated with, like, it's got to complicate how he writes Zoan users as well, where the idea is that those are the simplest type of Devil Fruit users to write. You get what I'm saying? There's also the argument that all Zoan transformations are working towards awakening. Or sorry, all Rumble Ball transformations are just like steps towards awakening. Because Monster Point is the most advanced Rumble Ball transformation. And we can tell that that's kind of close to Devil Fruit Awakening. Because we see that the Impel Down guards are basically the equivalent of Monster Point. And they seem like partially awakened Zoan users. So, you see what I'm saying? So, you could have the other argument, which is like the Rumble Ball is just like... a pharmaceutical method to get towards awakening, in which case other characters would never, like, naturally awakened zones would never need it. Jack D. Slime, thanks for the 2. Do you think Joy Boy and Nika are different people? Yeah, like, Nika doesn't need to be a real thing or not. I think that like, Nika is the god that... I think Joy Boy just ate the Nika fruit. And Nika is this conceptual god of, like, you know, free-spirited, imaginative... whatever, like warrior of liberation, right? It's just a concept that people came up with. Whether or not Nika actually exists, it's kind of like, you know, does the Buddha exist in the One Piece world? I don't know. All that matters is that people believed in it, right? And then the power of Devil Fruits is that the idea of One Piece in general is that people's dreams can become reality. So if people imagined a being like this that could save them, then at the end of the day, that being can be real. in the form of a devil fruit. Josh Nesbitt, thanks for the 5. I'm 30 minutes behind right now, but I want to say that in 10th grade, I wrote a paper that I needed to graduate about why Shrek 2 is better than Shrek 3. I got 97%. Nice. Good shit. Shrek 2 is way better than Shrek 3. I don't know why I even thought Shrek 3 was... Like, everything down to the villain. The villain was fucking... It was Prince Charming, who was basically the gag villain, like, the gag villain of part 2, like, not the real villain. The real villain was Fairy Godmother, who was very formidable. But then you took Prince Charming, who's not formidable at all. He was the joke villain, the incompetent idiot son, and then you made him the main villain of part 3. It just made no sense to me. MPA Slick, thanks for the 5. Which series has the worst fan base? Oh, I don't want to get into this, man. JoJo's, My Hero, Jujutsu Kaisen, Demon Slayer, Attack on Titan, One Piece, etc. I don't want to get into this at all. Like, I think that they have different... I think that they all have different flaws of their fan base. Like, for example, I would think... I feel like the JoJo's fan base is just... fucking rabid. One Piece fans are too, but, like, JoJo's fans... I just find them, like... I think because JoJo's gets to operate under this thing where it's like, oh, it's all just a big meme, but then like JoJo's fans are also like, oh, but the writing's really, really good and deep here and like brilliant. Like they get to operate under both categories, so it's annoying because JoJo's memes, they just get annoying at a certain point, and it's like, oh, it's just, I don't know. That side of it gets annoying, but then also, heaven forbid you ever suggest that Steel Ball Run is like anything less than, the greatest thing ever put to paper. So, it's like, I just dislike that fan base a lot because it's just, I view the One Piece fan base as like, it can be hive-mindy for sure, but I think it's more open to discussing the nuances and criticisms of the series, and then also like, I think there's a lot more you can break down in One Piece in general, so you could have so much discussion about just One Piece lore and One Piece little themes and details, etc. You can with JoJo's too, but really only for like the later parts, and then the fan base itself still treats it as like the most like it just treats everything else as like dirt because it's not JoJo's. I feel like even though JoJo's itself is so ridiculous and I don't think it like aims to be anything that that deep for the most part. My Hero fan base is just dumb kids who are social outcasts, I think. So I've got nothing to say there. Jujutsu Kaisen, I don't think it's a bad fan base. I think even Jujutsu Kaisen fans get sick of its own shit at times. I think like sometimes when they're like acting like it's some really revolutionary series, that can be much, but I think for the most part they just like their series. Demon Slayer is just anime fans. I don't think Demon Slayer... I don't know if I've interacted with Demon Slayer anime fan base that much. Yeah, and I think the One Piece fan base... I think it's got a bit of a chip on its shoulder that it's got to push the idea that One Piece is the best story ever. And it's just, I think the One Piece fan base is very argumentative. I definitely think that it shits on other series a lot. I think the One Piece fan base maybe glazes the author more than any other series I've ever seen, which is kind of ridiculous because One Piece does have a lot of flaws as well, like really, really big flaws as well. But One Piece fans generally, a lot of them don't want to hear it. But at the same time, I think the One Piece fan base is pretty cool because I think just like what I said before, the amount of discussion and love that you can see from the series and like people wanting to talk about just like the oldest arcs and the oldest storylines and like all these nitty gritty lore bits and the amount of theorizing and debates and like passion. I think that also like just how deeply entrenched you can get in the story because it's such a dense story, I think is pretty cool. So it's a double-edged sword for sure. JWP, thanks for the 10. Thought about this when you brought up Dofi. In your opinion, who are the best Devil Fruit users? In my opinion, Dofi probably mastered / maxed out the potential of his fruit the most. He just got outscaled by Haki. I always said that I think that Luffy did the most with his fruit because if you don't count Awakening, like to me with Doflamingo's fruit, his fruit, he had the most abilities available, like Yeah, he did a lot with his fruit, but he also just had the most abilities available, right? His fruit can do a lot. Like, the strings can cut people. The strings can be used to manipulate people. These are all things the strings can do. Some stuff is innovative, like using the strings on clouds to fly around and stuff. But to me, it's just like, if you look at Luffy, even just the concept of gears, right? The concept of gears alone, like gear second and gear third. If you think, like, I think that nobody, period, ever imagined something like the doping technique that Luffy used for gear second, right? We were all just like, yeah, Luffy's rubber, stretchiness, bounciness, springiness, right? That's what Luffy can do. I think the idea of being able to stretch your, stretch your veins, stretch your blood vessels, all of that stuff to pump blood more, and essentially, just pump blood faster to be able to fight faster and everything like that. That's a very unintuitive ability. You know what I mean? I think nobody predicted Luffy being able to use that, and I think out of all like rubber or stretchy type characters in fiction, I can't think of anyone that could think of an ability like that. That's a very unique ability that only one, like, Luffy came up with. That's a extremely, like, that's beyond out of the box, like that's really, really fucking out of the box. I just don't think anybody would think of doing something like that. So to me, that's taking the rubber ability and using it for something that is really, really, really really, really untraditional, really, really, like, requires a tremendous amount of creativity and really fucking stretching the idea, I guess pun intended, of what this fruit can do. So to me, it's like, yeah, Doflamingo's, like, he does a lot with his fruit, but ultimately it's stuff that makes sense that you can do with it. Like, the strings are sharp, you can cut with them, right? The strings, you can manipulate characters with them. That's just how the strings fucking work, right? Some stuff is innovative, like using them to link to stuff to fly to clouds, but for the most part, I don't think I've ever seen any Devil Fruit user do something like Luffy did with Gear Second. That makes sense because Oda's, like, writing the story around Luffy, so he's going to put the most time thinking into Luffy's abilities. But yeah, just Gear Second alone to me is basically stretching an ability further than any other character I've seen, because I don't think I've ever seen any character use their ability to give themselves a transformation that you would pretty much never think of as making sense with the ability that they have, and, like, just, pushing what they can do that much. So I always said I feel like Luffy's number one. Yeah, I mean, and same applies with, like, then gear third, gear fourth, using the springiness, using the bones. Like, he really thought about, like, every single aspect, right? Blood, bones, muscle. He figured out how to max out every single aspect of it, right? And this was all before Awakening, so this is all when he was still just a rubber man, right? Supersonic Squad, thanks for the 5. Do you think Chopper's fruit being so weird could be a sign ancient humans were much different than they are now? Or it's just nothing, haha. I don't know. I think maybe it's just because he's the first animal that we've seen eat a Zoan type fruit. I think that's the only reason I got. Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense to me either. Yukon John, thanks for the 5. Have you ever watched / read Full Metal Alchemist? Yeah, I watched it. If you have, who's your favorite character? Roy Mustang. Ed and Al are my favorite fictional characters ever. Yeah, I guess I'm generic. I like Roy Mustang. It's hard to dislike that character. Ed and Al are great. I mean, I didn't ever really like Alphonse that much, but Edward Elric's great, and I like their dynamic and their relationship a lot. I think even just, like, even the second episode, which shows the flashback of how Alphonse got turned into, well, what happened with Alphonse and, like, Edward losing his arm and everything like that. Even the second episode, I don't know, it was very powerful to me just hearing him, like, be like, he's the, like, I'll give you everything, I'll give you blah blah blah, I'll give you my arm, you gotta save him, like, you gotta give him back my brother, he's the only brother I have. I really like their dynamic always. Cheese Mango, thanks for the 5. What the fuck, Morj? I tuned into the Ghetto Reverie because you said you're gonna be on it, and the first thing I hear is you talking about faking orgasms. Those are the questions I was asked, and those are the questions I was asked. You gotta take that up with the people at the Ghetto Reverie, man. And it's called the Ghetto Reverie, so I don't know don't know what you expected. I didn't ask to be asked those questions. I just tuned in because Virgo asked me, and I was like, yeah, it's usually fun, so I was just gonna tune in, just chill, talk a little bit or whatever. But I got a lot of shit thrown my way. I was like, okay, I guess we're talking about this. Directed correct. Thanks for the 5. Very true. Aside from mythicals, zones yield the most simple and boring powers. Yeah, back in the day, zones were just the most boring, back in the day. Then I think once mythical zones came into play, then suddenly they became wildly interesting. Like at this point, I would say zone fruits are probably, mythical zones are the most interesting devil fruits, right? All 4 of the remaining Gorosei have mythical abilities, which is just, you can speculate so much on who's going to be what monster and stuff like that. There's so many mythologies you can drop on. Winry is a great character. Yeah, Edward Elric is a great character. Scar. I think that Full Metal Alchemist has a lot of it has a lot of good characters, I would say. Great characters. I know I've been saying great characters, but I'm like, I think Edward is a great character. I think Hohenheim is a great character. Roy Mustang is a very cool character. Full Metal Alchemist, it's one of those series where you can't really, there's not that much negative that you could, like, there's not that much you can critique it about. I think it's just really, really solid all the way through. It's good in most every category you could ask for. And it wraps the story up fairly well. Not a lot of series do that. So, I don't know. The one thing I would say about it is I didn't love, at least for Brotherhood, I personally, and I understand if other people don't agree, but compared to many other animation styles in anime, I don't think I liked the art style that much. I don't think I enjoyed the art style. It felt a little bit, I don't know, it felt a little bit generic or basic to me. I didn't feel like the art style carried a lot of character, but that's literally the only thing I can say, That's the only thing and that's the only thing I personally feel about it. I feel like I should watch it again at some point, honestly. SMX Wing, thanks for the 2. Kuma, Iron Giant, Frankie/Vegapunk versus Garcia. Oh, it's just a bunch of robots? That'd be cool. Hawkeye is awful? You don't like Riza? Reese? What's her name? Let me see her name again. Yeah, it is Riza Hawkeye. Jose Lari says Edward is like the only great character in my opinion. Yeah, I would kind of agree with that. But it's still fine to have a bunch of good characters, Just TJ says, someone give me a rundown on what we're doing right now. If you're just tuning in, we've done a list. This is not ranked. 1 through 8 right here is not ranked. This was just me writing out the options for most likely characters to help in the defeat of Saturn, to be involved, right? And gave some reasons for each. Then we ended up voting on who's most likely out of these 8 options. And the final votes were Luffy is most likely to be involved, then Sanji, then Iron Giant, then Kuma, then people believe that Dragon could be involved, some people believe Kizaru could be involved, some people believe that the Blackbeard Pirates, Laffy and Katarina Devon could be involved. Daniel Hennington says, has anyone asked him about Kagurabachi yet, LMFAO? I read the first chapter. I didn't think it was... I'm of the opinion that a lot of manga don't have great, super unique first chapters. So, I don't know. I thought that it got made fun of a lot, maybe unfairly. But I've not read any of the next chapters, so you all will have to tell me if it gets good or better or something like that. Jack D. Slam says, revote Sanji and Robot. No, because we voted when... I'm not redoing all the votes, man. That one was tight, though. Pride and Wrath were dope villains. Yeah. I thought Hohenheim's a good character. I like that character a lot. I thought his story was interesting. You know what I like about Hohenheim? This is a... Full Metal Alchemist has been out for a while. Alright, I'll say that, okay? And I'll give you a heads up warning. For the next 30 seconds, I'll be talking about a spoiler from it. But not a huge spoiler. One of the reasons I like Hohenheim is that I think is a cool concept is that lots of times these old, really strong, the father figure, the really strong, old dude, it's just some really, it's an old guy that's, just a beast, right? Like Whitebeard or Yamato or something like that, right? Hohenheim, he was that sage-like old dude who had powers that were beyond everybody else. But it's not because he was, inherently, a really strong or broke or talent, back in he's just old. He's just been around for a while. He's not some super talented alchemist or something like that. He's just been like he was just a dude that fucked up and made a mistake way back when, a naive kid basically, and since then he's just been around for ages and ages and just became strong over time because he just learned a lot of shit. That's basically it. At least as far as I can remember. So I don't know. I thought that was a cool concept that the traditionally really strong old guy character is really just like a very, very flawed normal person who has simply through a set of circumstances ended up living a very long and exceptional life. But he himself is a product of many mistakes. I like that character. Spoilers over. Abdurrahman Amari, thanks. We saw many mythical Zoan awakening. What do you think about Sengoku and Marco awakening? Let me take a look at Marco again. Does Marco have smoke around him? I feel like he almost might. He doesn't, right? No, he doesn't. I just don't know how much it matters at this point for... Because the thing is, like, with other... The only mythical Zoan that went through a drastic change, right? Between, a drastic change in power between, pre-awakening, post-awakening was Luffy. Like, Luffy's powers fundamentally changed once he awakened his Zoan, okay? For everybody else, it's hard to tell how much it really does, because we don't really see... Like, we would have to see, like... It would have to be something like we were watching Lucci fight Luffy for like a little bit first, and then like in hybrid form, and then Lucci started using awakening, and then we see from there how much of a boost that gives him. Because at the moment it's just like, how much stronger would King have been if he was awakened? How much stronger would Queen have been if he was awakened? We don't know, because the only Zoan awakening that we have as a measuring stick is Luffy. And he's different because his powers drastically revamped once he awakened. For everybody else, it just seems like Lucci's just... We can assume Lucci's probably a bit stronger and faster in Awakening. We can assume Kaku's probably a bit stronger and faster in Awakening. But we have no real gauge on how much of a boost that they got. We just see them... They start off in their awakened forms, you know? So, like, I have no idea, like, how much stronger would Marco be if he started using Awakening, or if he had Awakening. I don't know. SMX Wing, thanks to the 5. Hawkeye couldn't understand how Roy was crying and hurt when his friend Hughes died, but she goes insane crybaby mode when Roy gets a paper cut. Awful. Okay, I vaguely remember the details. Like, I vaguely remember what you're talking about, but I don't remember her being unsympathetic when Roy lost the character that you mentioned. I just don't remember the details of that part. I remember I liked Riza. Yeah, I think Full Metal had a lot of cool characters, like that woman that ran the Briggs Wall, the Ling, obviously like Roy Mustang, the teacher, the woman that taught Edward Elric and Alphonse. I don't remember her name now. Yeah, Wrath, Pride. It had a lot of random cool characters. Yeah, it's just got a like in a relatively short story, it established a lot of fun, like a lot of memorable characters. I'm talking about Brotherhood, by the way. I don't know anything that happened in the original version. Didn't read that. Envy? I like Envy a lot. Envy was cool. Envy's initial... Quick spoiler. 5-second spoiler. Envy's original transformation scene was fucking sick when it first happened. Spoilers over. CBZC says, I can't believe Morj spoiled Avengers. Insane. I'm going to call stream in about 5-10 minutes, by the way. Masan Rasat says, have you watched Black Lagoon? Black Lagoon, I've seen a lot about it. I almost got into it at some point, but I ended up not. I'll give it a try at some point. OG3 says, Morj, who's your favorite character and most hated character while watching Breaking Bad? Ooh, that's a great question. My favorite character was my favorite character shifted around a bit, but I think Walt was overall, he's just the most interesting character in the show. I liked Gus a lot, and one of my favorite episodes in Breaking Bad period is the episode that is just Gus doing his am I allowed to spoil Breaking Bad at this point? Came out finished 2011, I feel. 2013 it wrapped, actually. I remember Breaking Bad was such a cool phenomenon because I remember it was freshman year of college and was something that we all kind of bonded over on our floor because there's a, living room, like a common room area basically with a TV. So most people on the floor were fans of Breaking Bad, or at least like a good number of us. So, once a week you would go, like this was first semester, right? So I'm pretty sure it's fall. So everyone would go gather around when a Breaking Bad episode comes out, and everyone watches it then as it comes out. So that was fun. Good way to get to know some people on the floor. So that would mean that Breaking Bad came out in end of 2013. So it's been 10 years. So I'm going to be a little bit more spoilery with this. But anyway, Gus's trip south of the border. That's one of my favorite episodes with him, Mike, and Jesse. So I really like Gus as a character. Walt is just ultimately the most interesting character. My most hated character... My most hated character is probably Ted Beneke. Kind of just shitty. I'd have to think a little bit. Most hated character. Also that I really fucking disliked Todd and his uncle. Just because, like, not just for reasons like in story, like, oh, these are shitty characters, but also just like I felt that the uncle and the neo-Nazis were at the end of all of that stuff that Walt has overcome and the drug lords that he's taken down. These guys just felt like almost like B-list villains comparatively to Gus or something like that. But like they acted like they were such hot shit, and ultimately they were the ones that kind of got the better of Walt temporarily and like fucked up everything, and they were his final enemies. And I was just like, man, it feels like Walt should be so far past this sort of shit, like we got past Tuco, we got past Gus Fring, but now it's just, I don't know, it felt very generic, very unmemorable, and that kind of pissed me off. It pisses me off more seeing what feel like 2-bit criminals or whatever, like 2-bit thugs or whatever, like them getting to have such a big role in the story, and them basically like getting to act like such hot shit for like a period of time. It's like, man, I don't know. On a Jogwall, thanks with 5. With how badly Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood rushed the first bit of the story, I try to recommend the first 24-ish episodes of Full Metal Alchemist before FMAB if they're already an anime fan. Yeah, I could definitely see that, but I personally just got into it through Brotherhood, and it vaguely, like, I never felt like I was missing anything past this point. I could tell that I was joining in on a story and being moved through or being caught up in a way kind of quickly, with stuff being explained to me and stuff moving along a little bit fast. But once it got to wherever, like, that feeling didn't last too long. Like, after a little bit, I was just like, okay, I don't know what part yeah, like, I don't know how important the stuff that was sped through was, but I felt like I was able to really enjoy the story without knowing it. Double J says, what do you think of Undead Unluck? I need to enjoy, or sorry, I need to, I think I'm going to enjoy the anime. I need to watch it still. I've read a good portion of Undead Unluck. I don't know how far behind I am in chapters now, but I was pretty far along in Undead Unluck. I took a pause at one point basically, but I really was enjoying the series. I didn't stop it because I wasn't enjoying it. I just stopped it because at some point, like, some stuff got in the way, and then time-wise I never just got back around to reading it. But the anime, I'm curious how it does the first few episodes, because the manga, the beginning of the story just genuinely isn't good, and it has a sharp uptick in, it has a sharp change in what the story is 17 chapters in, from what I remember. And so I'm really probably just going to tune in once it gets to that part, but I'll probably binge the first few episodes when that time comes. Better Call Saul, I've got to still read. Mr. Crescent says, Undead Unluck manga is great and refreshing. I really, really fucking enjoyed it once I started getting deeper into it. It's just the beginning is so jarringly off-putting. Like, I would not have continued it if people hadn't been pushing for it. Calvin says, watch Made in Abyss, Morj. I watched the first 2-3 seasons or whatever. It's not for me, I think, at the end of the day. Like, for a variety of reasons. It's fun to watch, but there's just nothing about it that really, really is drawing me in too much. I feel like I'm not super interested in whatever reason in terms of like what they're gonna find further and further in the Abyss. I don't like the trio of kid characters. I don't like the kid characters. People are always like, "Oh, the show's so fucked up. The show's so fucked up." Because I went in prepared for it to be fucked up, I didn't even find it to be that fucked up. You know, I did, and parts were really sad and dark and twisted. But at the same time, I think I still just don't fucking like the kids that I have to follow. And I'm not too invested in the mystery. Maybe if I'd watched further, I would have enjoyed. I don't know if I watched 2 seasons or 3. I don't know if 3 seasons are even out. I watched a good bit though. Might have seen 2. OG3 says read Better Call Saul. LMAO. Okay, man, come on. You know what I mean. I still gotta get into it. I didn't love the ending to Breaking Bad. I definitely think it peaked in season 4, but I thought it was fine. And that's all you can really ask for. I thought it was fine. And I know a lot of people really, really liked it, which helps the legacy of Breaking Bad. It's kind of different from, you know, as long as it's not like Game of Thrones ending, I'll mostly be okay with most TV endings. Like with Breaking Bad, the writers made clear that they weren't super planners with the story of Breaking Bad. They would write things in and then they'd be like, okay, we'll see where it goes. So they didn't have a concrete ending of season 5 in mind when they started the season. And I think you can tell. Like, I think they did a good job putting all the pieces together to make it feel like, okay, we cleared out a story here, basically. But you know what? With that in mind, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe that's the reason many people feel that Better Call Saul is better than Breaking Bad, because with Better Call Saul, you have to start with the ending in mind, right? Because it's a prequel, so you're trying to get the character from A to B, and you know exactly what B is. In fact, B is very, very defined and has been defined by a previous story, right? So you've got to write it with a very different mentality. So I wouldn't be surprised if that makes the story sharper or the character development better. But again, still haven't gotten into it. Tuna sub, thanks a lot. If you can't get into long manga right now, look up Summit of the Gods. It's only around 50 chapters. Summit of the Gods. See, some stuff just has a cool title, and I'm like, man, I kind of want to see that. I kind of know what that's about. The Summit of the Gods. It's a hiking manga. Hiking manga? I don't know. Alright, I'll think about that. It's an interesting recommendation. Disaster Master, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 3 months. Oh shoot, Milestone, what's up, Morj? How's the night been? Been good. It was a fun stream. You can kind of take a look at what we came up with here. The numbers are not in order. This is in order. The numbers are just listing off options in no order. This is the order that chat voted as most likely to be involved in Saturn's defeat. Insatiable Hunger, thanks for the 5. How would you rank the big 3? Like we know, One Piece doesn't have the action/animation like Naruto and Bleach. Rate side character, story, theme, conflict, structure. I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of like each category or whatever, but I'll say right now, I just put One Piece in generally. Like for me, I think One Piece is, to me, I think it's significantly better than Naruto and Bleach in most categories, across the board. So I just don't even compare One Piece to the other members of the big 3. I compare it in more like in shonen elements, like fights, or which one has cooler power-ups, or like, you know, power systems or stuff like that. Like, I'll do that, or like character designs, but for the most part, for anything writing related, I generally think One Piece is much better. I think that Naruto, however, especially in my opinion early on, I think a lot of the emotional highs that Naruto was able to hit, and like, yeah, a lot of the emotional highs, a lot of the more moving character moments or character arcs, I think early Naruto especially was as good as One Piece in those areas, for sure, in different ways, better in certain ways. And I think certain things like Naruto, just the whole storyline of Naruto finally coming around and defeating Pain and being acknowledged by the village and everything like that. I think that singular character storyline from Naruto, from who he was at the beginning of the story to who he was once he defeated Pain, I feel like that character storyline is one of the most one of the most emotionally powerful storylines you can have for, like, feel good storylines you can have for a character. I will obviously feel much more when Luffy becomes Pirate King because I'm much more invested in the story of One Piece, but at the same time, you know, Luffy's not really written like a real person, whereas Naruto is written like a much more, flawed, emotionally sensitive, traumatized kid who is constantly going through insecurities and, just general, like, feelings of self-worth and his desire to prove himself, etc. You get more into Naruto's character, whereas Luffy is a character, if that makes sense. You get more into Naruto the person, whereas Luffy is presented more and more like this character, like this force of nature. So it's two very different things. So you can relate probably more. You can feel, not relate's maybe the wrong word, but you can feel more for Naruto through his journey, I think, than you can for Luffy in some ways, in my opinion. In many ways, in my opinion, if I'm being honest. But aside from that sort of thing, like, I think Naruto has some phenomenal strengths, and I think that there's a reason that Naruto in particular, like, not just because of the ninjas versus the pirates thing, but I think the story of Naruto, Uzumaki in particular, resonated with so many kids growing up, because, like, a lot of kids that are into anime and stuff like that, especially in that day and age, were, like, outcasts or losers in some sense, and the story of Naruto, a kid who is an outcast, a loser, etc., coming around to eventually be basically this guy that everybody respects, loves, and welcomes. That's a very, very, very powerful story that I think, because of so many of other flaws that Naruto's story has kind of been lost in the mix. But I think it probably does that sort of core, key, resonant character storyline better, of that particular trope, right? Like outcast, loser type, etc., who eventually comes to be welcomed, loved, respected by everyone in his community. I think it does that probably better than any other shonen has ever since, and I think that there's a lot to be said for that. So, as much as I've shit on Naruto in the past, I still think that its strengths, like where its strengths really shine and some of its core character stuff, is really, really impressive, and it can be much more nuanced than One Piece, I think. Like, One Piece is more grandiose and larger than life characters. But, that stuff aside, I think just overall, One Piece, thematically, world building, general plot structure, general narrative structure, and figuring out, like, a direction for the story, which I think Naruto and Bleach are nowhere near as good at, right? I think that's One Piece's greatest strength, right? General creativity in terms of ideas, like Oda's coming up with crazy ideas all the fucking time. I just think that One Piece is better in most every regard, so I don't really compare it to Naruto or Bleach in general. I also think it's a disservice to Naruto to compare it to Bleach. I think that there's a solid gap between, like, One Piece to Naruto's writing to Bleach's writing. Naruto and One Piece, I still think that there's, like, some really, really great character stuff that's done in Naruto, and really, really great ideas in Naruto. And I think writing-wise, I do think Naruto does some things better than One Piece. Bleach, I just don't think belongs with the other two, in my opinion. Like, I think Bleach's strengths are just, for the most part, just basic shonen strengths. Like, cool fights, cool power-ups, cool designs. Shine V, thanks for the 2. Morj, help. My friends keep insisting Law beats King. No, wait. That one's tricky because just because of the matchup, I don't know how Law's internal stuff works against King. Just because of the matchup, it's possible. You have to acknowledge just because of the matchup, it's possible. But outside of that, no. Like, Law can't beat characters of that level, in my opinion. Actually, not even... what do you call? Yeah, most first mates Law loses to. King is just a weird one, because it's like, how much does Law's internal stuff affect King? Like, does King have... Because King's biggest thing is durability. It's hard to deal with. Hobby Horse's Bleach is severely underrated with its character writing. Sorry, Morj. It's just... I feel like 1,000 Year Blood War might be tricking some people, but it's just not. I think like some of Bleach's better characters are some well-written side characters um I think Shunshi Kyoraku, good. But again, like in general, Bleach's character focus is much more scattershot than Naruto's, and its central characters that it focuses the most on are generally very, very shallowly written compared to the other members, like the other big three. Crunchy Troll, thanks for the 5. Naruto is he's literally me as anime. I think for a lot of kids that was the case. Naruto's like, let me just clarify one thing, by the way, which is, I have no level of Naruto bias, because for me, out of the big three, Naruto was the one that I watched the least of and was the least a fan of, if that makes sense. Like, One Piece was first for me, then Bleach I really fucking loved, by the way. Bleach and One Piece were neck and neck for me for a while. And then One Piece passed it up for me eventually. And Naruto I really enjoyed for the part 1. Then I kind of stopped watching it. I really enjoyed it, but just something about I think because I was already really into One Piece and Bleach, and like I didn't really love any of the characters like I did with like I loved Luffy, Zoro, the Straw Hats, like across the board, like Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Nami, like every like Robin, all of the Straw Hats I loved. Like I loved every single main character in One Piece, which I think is so important to why One Piece is so beloved by so many people. You can really love every main character. Bleach, I loved Ichigo. Ichigo for me, middle schooler. I like Ichigo was probably my favorite main character over Luffy for a long period of time, because like if you're just like a middle schooler, like Ichigo's this cool badass, like he's got this dope Bankai look and everything like that. He's like, a bit of a rebel. I mean, Luffy's obviously a rebel, but like Ichigo's like a cool rebel, right? The way he talks, acts, look. He's more of like a stoic character, etc. And I just didn't resonate with Naruto's character a lot. I really fucking disliked Sasuke. I didn't like any of the Naruto characters a lot, but their storylines could be emotionally moving for me, but none of them really hit with me. So I think part 1, after that kind of just didn't really follow Naruto. I got back into it during the Pain arc, and that's kind of crazy that I got back into it during the Pain arc. And even despite having a big knowledge gap, reading the Pain arc week to week really, really, like, it felt like a very, very powerful arc to read, because I had gotten the context from part 1. Like, I had seen how much Naruto had wanted validation, etc., from his community, seeing that kid that they all shit on come back to this ruined, destroyed village and just be the final line of defense and being like, I'm like putting you all on my back and I got you guys, basically, and then just saving the whole village in front of their eyes. That was really, really fucking cool. Like, that is an amazing storyline. So again, Naruto's whole character storyline, I think you can understand why he as a character is really, really endearing to so many people. However, at the same time, the story wasn't over. You need more stuff, right? Like, you still have to resolve all this other shit. And so that it's weird, because it feels like the key thing that I always wanted to see for Naruto, and I think that most readers wanted to see for Naruto, it was ultimately resolved right then and there with the Pain stuff. Then it became more about like what Naruto's philosophy was, rather than what his character need was. And Naruto's philosophy was like, well, I want everyone to reach peace and understanding. And it's like, yeah, we're on board, Naruto, and now we got to watch you fight this whole war. But it ultimately feels like the emotional hook of what Naruto as a character really provided, right? It felt like that a lot of that was resolved with him defeating Pain. And I think that that's a kind of a mistake, in my opinion, to time things up in that way, where you feel like what the character's biggest emotional need was resolved with this big conflict, but then we've got to tack on this other conflict to basically round out the themes of the story and this character's additional philosophy, basically, when that doesn't feel like that was necessarily what drew us to him towards the beginning of his arc. Disaster Master, thanks for the 2. Speaking of King, does Anime King beat Manga Zoro? I don't even know how to scale this. I don't know. Crunchy Troll says pre-time skip Naruto is peak fiction. Yeah, in my opinion, basically this. Pre-time skip Naruto is as good as One Piece, in my opinion. I still personally, even while watching pre-time skip Naruto, I still personally preferred One Piece because I like the characters better. But in terms of what I was seeing, I felt like it was as good as One Piece. Post-time skip Naruto, I think, was more hit or miss. I still think that the Pain arc was phenomenal as a way to finish off most of what we wanted out of pre-time skip Naruto for what we wanted to see for his character. And then the Great Ninja War and stuff, I felt like it was just lacking and messy and long and boring and I don't know. All right, guys. Masandra Sat says terrible take. That's my thoughts. I don't even remember a lot of Naruto's story that well, because I did go back and read the parts that I'd missed, but I think I'm still missing a few little segments or bits. But I think I got the whole story at the end of the day, but I was never too invested in it. So, you know, these are just my thoughts on Naruto. All right, guys. I'm gonna call the stream here. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, I had a good time. And I will talk to you all soon, this Thursday, once